It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Andy's here. Alex is here. Shelly Brisbane's back, filling in for Jason Snell. And Apple has announced an event. I'm not getting up at 7 in the morning to watch it, but you can. We'll talk about what they might announce at this new event. Apple's environmental push. Is it real or is it all window dressing? And a bit of a shock. Vision Pro sales seem to be dwindling. Maybe you're not so surprised. All that coming up with a lot more in just a bit on MacBreak Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 918, recorded Tuesday, April 23rd, 2024. You're rubbing it wrong. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show where we cover the latest Apple news. Jason Snell has once again boarded an airplane to nowhere. So, hey, good news. Shelly Brisbane's back. It's great to see you, Shelly, from the Texas Standard. See, I'll get it right this time.
You did. Good to be here. And I don't know where Jason is either, other than he's up in the air. I don't keep track of him, apparently.
He could be on a Zeppelin flight. It's not unheard of.
Well, yeah. That would be on brand. We like that.
Man, I wish I were on a Zeppelin flight. I have always wanted to go on a Zeppelin. I think they should bring airships back. I really do. Andy Anatko is also here from Anatko.com and GBH in Boston. And Andy and I had a secret dinner last week. It was so much fun.
Yeah, we talked about all kinds of things, and no one else was invited, so you can imagine the things we talked about. So if that makes anybody think that they were left out, well, that's kind of too bad because
you were.
No, it's I'm just kind of thrilled to be at the dinner. But,
it was so much fun. It was nice
you were in town. I'm glad that you had time to get together.
Yeah, it was great. I was visiting my mom, but I'm back now. Alex Lindsay's also here. OfficeHours.global.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
We have a day. We have a date, but we don't have an event. Apple announces May 7th event, putting that in scare quotes, because the invitation is, why don't you watch this video on May 7th? That's 7 a.m. Pacific time. Why don't you watch that video?
This is like Taylor Swift. They're saying, we don't have an album for you, but if you wait for this date, you will be able to watch something that we actually recorded quite a while earlier. We will be nowhere near the place that you think we'll be, but you're welcome to see what we did at the time when we were at that place doing the thing.
This is
my condolences to those of you on the West Coast because it's prime time for most of us.
Sucks.
But just think of it as getting up to order an Apple product. Oh, no, you're not. You're just going to watch a video.
We really enjoyed the fact that Apple was on the California time for so many years. I guess it's only fair that you Easterners...
They've done it before. They've done a couple of them where they've done them out of New York or something like that, but there's no reason to do them this
And then there was
now.
the 7 p.m. one. That was the weirdest one.
Yeah.
I saw 7 and then I looked again. I saw, are we doing 7 p.m. again? And I checked and it was the morning. So I was like, okay.
Needless to say, I was not invited to watch the video.
You're not invited to watch the video.
This is now at this point it's just throwing shade. It's just throwing shade. It's like, we're not going to invite you to watch our video. So, but those who received the invitations saw this, a splash of color, which is clearly a rainbow apple that's been smooshed.
Really deep, intense colors, as though a new display technology hitherto unknown to the realm of iPad. And what's that? It's a hand holding an Apple Pencil.
It's very dimensional.
We can only conjecture, of course, at this point, this will have something, if anything, to do with the iPad, but we feel somewhat confident in making this sort of prediction.
You think, is it an AR?
Right out of my limb. My neck's all the way out.
This is the commentary that MacBreak Weekly listeners come for.
What they look for.
Damn straight.
Come for the commentary, stay for the cheese. There will be no cheese on this episode. So should I go to apple.com and see a USDZ?
I think you'll see something on the morning of the event. They'll swap it over and we'll see. We have to all watch a movie together.
It'll go sploosh, sploosh. Splish, splash, I'm taking a bath. So 7 a.m. What do you think, John Ashley, producer man? Should we stream that live?
I mean, that's on you.
Yeah.
How early do you really want to get a video?
Well, let me just see. What day of the week is May 7th?
It's
a
on
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Quite convenient. Maybe what we should do is just come in at our normal time, 11 a.m. Pacific, having all watched, except for me because I was not invited, this fine video and discuss it. How about that?
That's not, see, you got me scared there for a moment there, because I thought that, hey, we should move MacBreak up and do it live, because I'm not waking up at 10 a.m. Come on.
It's going to be iPads, obviously, probably the new iPad Pro with OLED display. You were referring to the rich colors, Andy.
Yeah. And that's going to be pretty cool, because I have devices with OLED. I have devices that don't have OLED. I think we've talked about OLED displays before, and the complaint is usually that the contrast is way higher and the colors are a lot punchier. But hey, that's like having a McDonald's cheeseburger with all the salt and all the fat and all the carbohydrates. And the answer to that is yes, we know. We like salt, we like fat, we like carbohydrates. That's why they put them in the burgers. And so OLED displays that have this for ordinary work, it's absolutely fantastic. What's going to make it really cool for Apple is that oftentimes the disadvantage is that, all that punchiness comes at the cost of color accuracy. Like if you're using this as a creative to create art, edit photos, edit video, whatever, you kind of want to see what you think that most people are going to see. You don't necessarily get that on like a Windows laptop with an OLED display. You have a lot of faith, however, that when Apple puts that on an iPad, they're going to make sure it's color accuracy. It's still going to be like probably the best. The goal will be to make it the best display you can get on an Apple device. And for a while, like iPads are often in that category.
And given the pencil in the actual graphic, it'd be really interesting to see how far they push that. I mean, there's a lot of us have felt that there was a lot more you can do with the pencil, proximity control, being able to, do more things that feel more like airbrush, do more things with the tip, more things that are pressure sensitive. There's a lot of things that could be done with the pen for artists that, I think a lot of us thought would happen 5 years ago, that maybe given how proud they are of the pencil, given that it's in the actual graphic, we might see some innovation there.
I'm glad to see it happening for those who are excited about OLED. I personally, and I said this on a podcast a while ago when they were asking about predictions for iPads, and I said, well, it's not a prediction, but it's a wish list. Could somebody give me a 12.9-inch iPad Air? And I didn't think that was realistic at the time, and subsequently it's become more of a live rumor. And part of the reason for that is that Apple has all these extra screens lying around, apparently enough to make iPad Airs without OLED displays. And as somebody who is very mid-market, that's an insult, I suppose. But I live in the mid-market. What can I tell you? And I don't really need the poppy OLED display for my personal use. And I would like to save a little money, but I love a really big iPad. So I hope that there is also a 12.9-inch iPad Air for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've got a 12.9-inch M1 iPad Pro in front of me right now. And if I could have gotten everything that I get out of this without having to spend MacBook Air type money for it, that would be awesome. It does make me wonder if Apple's going to start us down the same road that we wound up with the differences between the MacBook Pro and the MacBook Air, where it's like, okay, they're technically the same computer. They technically will benchmark pretty much the same. Most of the features that you would want in a MacBook Pro are also in a MacBook Air. So why do they have two different models? So if this rumor does prove to be true, I'm really keen to see how they differentiate a 12.9-inch iPad Pro from a 12.9-inch iPad Air, given that if they both have the same sort of displays, that has to be a way that they're going to save money and save the price point on the iPad Pro. But if they also have the same kind of features with the pencil, if they have a lot of the same things you can do with continuity, that's going to be a much more difficult question. I would love to see a 12.9-inch, much less expensive, though. I would have definitely gone for that had that opportunity.
So, this is Gurman says it'll give the Pro version a snazzy new OLED display. We know that. One thing he pointed out, though, this was a couple of weeks ago, that and you kind of see the tea leaves, that the iPad availability dwindles ahead of May revamp, but not for the iPad Pro, which is still well stocked, which is going to put Apple in a little conundrum, because if that's true, maybe they'll have both a M1 iPad Pro like you and I have, Andy, and this new I guess it'll be an M3 iPad Pro.
I mean, they've
with
done it
OLED.
before. They've had a complex product line with two things that are named the same but have different chips. I don't like it when they do that because it's very hard to talk about. But maybe somebody can get a deal and they think that they need an iPad Pro. But yeah, as you say, I don't know what the differentiation between a new iPad Air and an old iPad Pro ends up being at that
Maybe
point.
it would tickle your middle market fancy to have a lower cost iPad Pro. Would you consider it if it were down to close to the iPad Air?
Well, sure. The name doesn't matter. I mean, what I want to do is save money. I want to not pay, as Andy said, MacBook Air prices for a nice big iPad. And I will take screen real estate over the best screen technology
that's what you're
for
looking
my
for.
use.
You want
That's
12.9.
not,
Yeah.
Right. That's not everybody. And in fact, it was funny because after the 12.9 came out, people were very excited about it. There was sort of a honeymoon phase. And then it seemed like for a long time, people in the sort of pundit sphere where we all reside were saying 12.9, that's just way too big. I sure love my 11-inch iPad Pro.
Yeah.
And I all along continued to love my 12.9. I think the size is great, especially as the MacBook Pros are getting bigger. I think there's a reason to differentiate. I think 12.9 has a reason to exist. And I just love a screen that I can basically hang in midair and look at and use it in the way that I want to without having to be, tethered to a MacBook. And a big iPad makes me happy.
It is kind of like a little TV if you put it on a stand. It's kind of
Yeah, 100%. If you try like the standard size, what we accept as the standard size 11-inch iPad, it works great for productivity. It's going to work best if you've got an app in full screen. You can do slide over, and that will kind of work too. But for Stage Manager, and if you're really, really, really trying to get a lot of work done in the course of an afternoon, you really want 12.9 inches.
Absolutely.
Also, I'm no joke. I mean, I'm in the middle of kind of reorganizing how I've got my hardware set up on my work desks, and one of the things I'm buying is an articulated arm for my 12.9-inch iPad Pro, because one of the things I use it the most for is simply as a third display for my M1 MacBook Pro, which can only technically do 2 displays, and there's no lag, there's no suffering whatsoever. It is a 12.9-inch display that is kind of perfect as the window that I'm actually writing on, as I've got other windows, other displays for research. And so the ability to, it's a way that you're spending more for the larger model. However, you're getting value back in the form of, here are all the things you can do with it that make it a lot more useful and a lot more powerful, simply because it has more of a conventional sort of a laptop size screen. This is why I haven't seen any rumors to the effect that there'll be other kind of productivity features that are above and beyond, has a different display, it's a larger display, but things like, well, here's our things you can do with it as an external display for another device. Here are things you can do with it that basically as an accessory for a Mac or anything else you have in the Apple ecosystem. That's the sort of thing I'm super, super excited about, particularly in the Pro line. And that could be a way that they decide to differentiate. They say that, this is the 12.9-inch iPad Air is simply the iPad Air with a bigger screen, whereas the 12.9-inch iPad Pro is always going to be the one that is the workhorse, the workstation, the thing that, it's the most expensive one, but you'll be getting at least twice the value back in what you can do with it that you can't do on a smaller display or lesser hardware. Like if it's just the way it works with external displays, like having displays plugged into the iPad Pro, that would be super interesting to me as well.
I think the big challenge is figuring out what happens with the Pro and why do you get a Pro? Because the biggest challenge for the iPad is that it's so overpowered for what most people use their iPads for, that finding things. Now, I think that, Apple's put Logic and Final Cut and Resolve and there's LumaTouch and there's other things that are now pushing the iPad a little bit, in that area. But for most users, if you're not doing video or some of those things, it's really proving the need for a Pro versus, something a little bit lighter.
So here's another question. Given that there's been a lot of talk about AI at WWDC and the new AI M4 chip and so forth, all this speculation, mostly from Mark Gurman. Do you think there'll be an AI story on May 7th with these iPads?
No, I bet that they're saving that story for WWDC, where they can tell a story with a beginning, middle, and an end. Like we talked about last week, I do think that Apple needs to get the storytelling on AI absolutely perfectly, because even though they're not really obligated to pivot to being an AI-based phone, an AI-based desktop, AI-based everything, they do have to make sure that they're telling their customers, analysts, everybody that, yeah, we've been an AI company for a number of years. We just haven't put that above the headline, but here is sort of our strategy going forward. They can't really just simply mention offhand that, oh, and by the way, we have this new AI feature we're putting in there. I think that they might put that as a bullet point, like it's prepared. These new M3 based iPad Pros are prepared for the AI future that Apple and our users are going to be looking forward to. But I don't think that they're going to be using that place to show off new features we haven't seen before that are AI based.
I tend to agree, and I also wonder if maybe it's just a teaser at the end, something equivalent to coming soon that doesn't even have to do specifically with the iPads, and hey, in a month we're going to be back, because it is a little odd that they chose to do an event this late, because typically when you have a spring event, it would have been like in early April, we'd have already had it. And now we have an event that's very soon before WWDC, which says two things to me. It says they really want to get those iPads out, and that WWDC is pretty packed with other things, and they wouldn't have had time to do the iPads the justice they think they need.
That's a good point. It's only a month before WWDC. That makes sense. Yeah, clear the decks. Yeah. Alex?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I think that a lot of times you see a bunch of little releases. I wouldn't even be surprised if they release anything, other things that they've done in May where they've just put out a press release like this got faster or this whatever, because they're trying to clear a lot of those things, because after WWDC everything slows down until September. So the whole all the development stuff kind of simmers down. They're not going to do any releases or anything else between June 15th and or June 10th, really, and early September. And so they have to get everything out that they're going to get out before then. And all of it's going to tie back into whatever they're talking about at WWDC. So I think that it makes a lot of sense for them to, at least tell you what the hardware is. I don't think they have to tell you what the AI is. They'll just be like, again, as Shelly said, it'll be like a surprise, but I doubt it'll be a surprise in May. It'll just be a surprise. And hey, by the way, the thing that we sold you has more power than we told you.
Tim Cook, who is sad to say, back on X.com, actually put his emoji foo is strong with this one. He really likes putting emojis in his stuff. It's kind of like, nice job, Grandpa, you got emojis. So which is, I'm older than him, so I can say that, right? He's got pencil us in. Oh, get it. And then just in case you didn't get it, he actually has a pencil emoji next to it, and then he has the animated.
And that's why I think that there could be theoretically a lot of work being done on what that pencil actually does. That
would be cool,
more than what we would. Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing that, like, if that's, I have a pencil on each one of my iPads, and I think a lot of us thought that there'd be more we could do with it. For instance, airbrushing is something that is something we can do on a Wacom tablet, where you get the cursor close to it, but not on it. And you can start pushing buttons and spray onto things and stuff like that. And those are the kind of things that I think that we feel, it always felt like, to be competitive with a Wacom tablet, if you're talking to an artist. So there's a bunch of tools that the Wacom tablet has that the iPad doesn't. The iPad has, it's very portable. It's in a lot of ways, in some cases, a higher quality, higher frame rate, a lot of other things. But it doesn't have what they need to really switch over from a Wacom tablet to an iPad. And so it'll be interesting to see what they what they do there.
That was the first time I actually saw that animation. Am I overthinking things, or does it look like the animation is of the hand holding the pencil and sort of spinning it a little bit in his hand, in his or her hand? Does it look like they're tapping the eraser end of it? If we are programmed as Apple commentators to absolutely dissect every single one of these invites, I am required to wonder if this doesn't mean that there's a new there's a new version of the Apple Pencil, and maybe there's a tap there's a gesture button on the eraser end of it.
You don't even need to put a button in, do you? Because it has a tap on just.
Just a surface.
So I bet you could have it where it distinguishes between the side and the top. Anyway, who knows? Yeah. I think the folks at Procreate are probably jumping up and down with excitement. When I was at my mom's house, we're going through the old stuff, and I found an old Wacom tablet and the pencil, because she used to like to draw with that on her Mac. she stopped using it as soon as she got an iPad. I mean, it was like that solved it, right?
Yeah.
It's a different, I think for the most part, I think for most people it does. The iPad solves that problem. I have a Wacom tablet right here next to the iPad, and it's because it's still tied into my application.
That's your Telestrator.
I want to use it in
Wacom.
My Telestrator, but also Photoshop and other tools that I might want to use the Wacom tablet.
Do you find though? I mean, one of the advantages of the iPad and the Cintiq, for that matter, is you're drawing right on the image as opposed to the disconnect.
It's night and day.
You're used to it.
It really is. I haven't used a non-screen based Wacom tablet for 20 years. Like it's always.
So the Wacom you have there is a Cintiq or something.
It's a Wacom One, which is much less expensive.
But it has a screen.
Lines, but it has a screen. Yeah. So when I draw on this,
you're drawing on the image.
I can see what I'm drawing.
Yeah.
In that area, and there's no other way to do it. I mean, to me, I mean, it's like anybody who's doing a lot of work, I started using some version of a tablet 30 years ago. And so when as soon as you move to a screen, it's hard to go back.
I want to hire you to build a home studio for me. How proprietary is that combination?
No, I build home studios for people.
Oh, okay.
That's what
Can you build in a Wacom with a Telestrator kind of a thing for me?
I sure can.
Oh, that'd be so fun.
Can I ask a question that? Oh, go ahead.
It's such a nice flex. Go ahead, Andy.
No, I just occurred to me that maybe we should poll the panel. Is it Wacom or Wacom?
I can tell you with certainty that I asked at SIGGRAPH last year. I walked up and I said, "Is it Wacom?" And he says, "It's Wacom like water." So it's Wacom, and he was like, "That's the way you say it."
I don't care. I'm going to say Wacom from now on, just like I'm going to say Wacom. GIF. I don't care.
You're a rebel. You're a rebel.
I think they released a video or something on the pronunciation, didn't they?
It was funny. I don't know.
Because I think they really wanted people.
Over SIGGRAPH, I was like, "There's a booth, and I'm going to walk over, and I'm going to get this figured out."
Wow.
Because I have to confess, I almost giggled when you said Wacom One, because that just cracked me up.
I just like saying Wacom.
Slightly less funny. It's funny. I agree with it. But I was like, is that the way they pronounce it? And now we know.
Yeah.
Well, they say Wacom. I don't like Wacom. It sounds It sounds fancy. Wacom. I like Wacom.
Yeah. So the Wacom one is I think what happened was there was a lot of people coming out at $200 or $300 that were not Wacom that were putting out these things that were a little less expensive, and I think their starting entry point was at $650, $700 for the Cintiqs, and so they dumbed it down a little bit. And for me, that's perfect for like my Telestrator. It's a perfect.
How much is that?
I don't need all the other tools. It's like $330 or $350, something like that.
Yeah. Good. That could fit into my home studio budget.
Yeah.
I want to do a bunch of things though with the Stream Deck instead of
So what I do is that for mine I have the XL Stream Deck next to the. It's actually I put a piece of metal behind the Wacom tablet so that it's attached to it.
Yeah.
And so what I can do is I go like this, but I just hit a button and I got green.
Nice.
And I can make it.
Oh, look at that. So you use the Stream Deck with the Wacom.
Yeah. So the two of them are next to each other.
By the way, it's pronounced Strom Deck. I just want you to know it's
Strom Deck.
Strom. As in
I always wanted to do a cooking thing where you just do all the wrong. We are going to now make an avocado
salad.
Salad.
Everybody, how do you like whack-a-mole? There's the
Alex,
big one. That's got a lot of buttons.
Yeah,
is there a bigger one than that?
Oh,
there's one with knobs, right?
The next step up from that is to get the app for your iPad, and then
you just have a dedicated iPad.
Dedicated, but I have that big one is what I use for that, and then I have a little one, this tiny little one. This is what I run my presentations with. It's only 6 buttons.
Yeah, they give me this so I won't screw up with too many buttons.
Yeah, so
Leo, we're going to give you 6 buttons, but we're only going to turn on 4. So be careful.
We didn't want to give you too much power.
I love my very tiny Stream Deck because I don't have to remember what 37 buttons do.
Yeah, exactly.
It's cute. Actually, I'll put it in my bag. Sometimes when I'm working at home, I'm so used to having it. I use a lot of Stream Deck buttons for Adobe Audition stuff. And then when I go to the office to work, I don't have my Stream Deck and my hand is just flopping around in the air. I don't know what to do with it. So I just pack it in my bag now so that I look less ridiculous when I'm at the office.
Yeah.
Beware the dangers of Stream Deck Hand. Some people. By the way, this is a product from Elgato, because we're talking about everybody knows this, but it is a really great product from Elgato, which is now owned by Crucial, the memory folks. But they have done a good job, I think, with Elgato keeping them. And
it's such a simple thing, just a screen that's external, that's just used for buttons, and that kind of reminds me of the one feature of iPads that I've always really, really wanted, and I thought it was such a natural that if Apple were to create like some sort of set of APIs for if I have an iPad or better yet an iPad Mini connected to my desktop, I want to be able to use it as a controller, as a button input, so that and allow Adobe to sense the presence of it and say, oh, well, I see you've got an iPad docked to your desk. Would you like me to use that as a control deck so that you can have scrubbers, you can have color pickers on it, you can basically mix colors with your fingers, or if I'm using streaming apps, here is now my anytime I want that incredibly funny fart noise, just here's the button for the fart noise.
Right.
Here's the button to switch cameras.
You could be a morning DJ with that.
In my early days of podcasting, there were some soundbite apps out there, and in fact, you could have several boards of apps. So I guess you could have your silly morning zoo fart noises,
I do it.
and then you could have your NPR sounds on the other board, and all you'd have to do is swipe from one to the other, and then you switch. And I used that on an old iPad, and it was a lot of fun actually.
Yeah,
Farrago on the Mac will do that. Yep.
Farrago.
Yeah.
Yeah, Farrago. Right, from Rugamiva.
It's pronounced Farrago.
Sorry, I couldn't help it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But when Apple dabbled with a touch bar, which was kind of slapping at this kind of question, but wouldn't it be great if that were actually something that's baked in? Once again, one of the value that you get by deciding that, yes, I have a perfectly good MacBook, but I'm also going to spend $1,000 on an iPad Pro, or I'm going to spend $500 or $600 on an iPad Mini, which there are no rumors about an iPad Mini, but I hope to God there is.
Well, I was going to bring that up, because
Rev.
I have the iPad Pro 12.9 like you do, the M1, but my go-to day in, day out is the Mini. That's the one I use many, many times a day compared to the iPad Pro, which I rarely use, once in a while. So I'd be if they make an OLED iPad Mini now, they're talking.
Yeah.
I still haven't really gotten into using the heavy ones. I mean, I have two Pros right here that I use as controllers for other things and everything else. And but I feel like I could have. The size is nice. How powerful they are is not important to what I do. I'm using them to control Mimo Live and Mimo Live and to control, my ATEMs and stuff like that. But I'm not, I on a day-to-day basis. But I do grab them and use them for other things. When I go into the field, I kind of grab the two of them, throw them in my backpack with my laptop.
I have an iPad Mini I think it's like a third generation. It is old as hell. I'm not even sure it takes the latest operating system, but it is my go-to for when I'm going to be out of the office for the entire afternoon, but I need to have something nearby in case there's a breaking story, or there's an editor or a producer calls and says, hey, can you have something for me in the next 2 hours? I need to get some work done. Or I just want a really great, rich reading experience, or rich video experience, or gaming experience. There's even a new, I think it's Razer has a new game controller. One of those kinds that's like two halves of really, really good Rumble controller that are separated by a slider that you can put a phone in between. And this one is compatible with the iPad Mini. All these sort of things where even though I usually have reason to take my 12.9 inch with me, the ability to simply have an iPad Mini in my bag, plus a compact Bluetooth keyboard, and not know it's in there, even when I'm walking around New York for the entire day. It's this thing where I can have the meeting, file my story, or file my notes, or do my live stream or whatever, and then for the rest of the day, I'm not like checking a bag with at the Met with this big hunky sort of piece of thing about it. It's just a perfect thing for what I want. And that I'm a skinflint when it comes to spending my own money. Again, hello, freelance journalist in a rapidly collapsing market, but I would have money for for like an updated iPad mini, because it really does fill one of those little nooks and crannies that that nothing else can fill.
We're due too. The 6th generation, the latest iPad mini, came out September 2021, 3 years ago.
I was going to say, it's really a shame that they don't update them more often, because I have had iPad minis in the past and they've just gotten old. I use them for reading, and also I think nowadays I'd probably use it more as a teleprompter. I've been using the big iPad as a teleprompter, but there's certain times when you're in a tight space and you just need something to hold up with your script on it. And I think I could do that with an iPad mini, but I'm kind of tired of buying them and then they get old and I either can't use them anymore or don't want to for whatever reason. So I don't know, if Apple would do what they will never do for me, which is, say every couple of years we'll have a new one, then I'd feel a little better. But
I think the hard part is again, it's what do you, I mean, assuming they stay in good condition, I guess other than the battery slowly winding out, I have iPads that I'm still using that are, 8 years old and 10 years old. And I don't like, and this gets back into the real challenge with the iPad is that it's got so much horsepower and we use so little of it on a day-to-day basis with most of the apps that we use that they stay in cycle. And other than I have to keep some of them plugged in all the time because the battery's worthless. The rest of them are, I mean, they just kind of are still being used. And so it's hard.
That's true. I mean,
and then I don't update, I update my phone I update my phone almost every cycle because of the camera. And so that I all I'm doing is following the camera. And then the iPads, I go, well, I get around to it. And usually every other year, every third year, I get a new iPad because it just isn't, I just don't know what I would do with it that I really need that for.
I mean, I think that's true. And I say my mini got old. I think I must have had a second generation or something. So it was really old. It wasn't viable. But I think because I have other iPads, it wasn't urgent to me. I kind of miss it. Miss my little friend, the iPad mini. But since I have an 8th generation iPad over here, or 9th, I think it's 9th. And then I have an old iPad Pro that I hope to replace with an iPad Air. So at that point, you're like, well, can I justify spending a few $100s on a mini, even if it would be really great to tote around? Because I can fit a mini in my purse, and that would be really nice to have that one that device and my phone.
100%. Yeah, like I said, I carry a laptop bag sort of thing. And the thing is, even with an iPad mini, even with a full-size iPad in it, I'm always very aware that it's there, if only for the fact that if I try to put like my camera in there, a couple other things, it makes it kind of difficult to wiggle out the 12.9-inch iPad. But again, the ability to simply say, I'm going to take it, not because I have any intention of using this, but because I might have a use for it later on, even if it's just I want to dump all the pictures I took on my camera and take a look at them and triage them during my 1 hour long commuter rail ride on the way home. The ability to take it with you and not know it's there, but it's there whenever you have it. Because I can't think of another computer, probably even the 12.9-inch iPad Pro included, that fits that bill so well, where I don't know if I'm going to need a computer, but I would like to have one in case I need one. I want to be something more useful than $100 like Kindle Fire or my phone, but this is the perfect solution for me.
And the mini, I can even type on the virtual keyboard. I would never try to do that on a bigger iPad, and I could certainly get a keyboard case with a mini, but I probably wouldn't in order to keep the weight down even further. But because it's so small, it's easy enough if I have to type. I might or might not be filing stories, probably not, but I could certainly write emails and texts and that sort of thing.
Yeah, like you and I are like in the same sort of position where like a lot of our job is to be Ford Prefect as much as possible. Like we just have a satchel. It has our towel. It has our sub Ethernet signaling device, and it has our book in it. And so long as we have that with us, we can work. We can get by. Yeah.
Did somebody say something or no? Okay. Let's take a little break. I want to talk about what somebody has called FineWoven Gate. I think that was you, Andy.
That was me. I like a good rhubarb.
Because, I actually have something to say about all that. But first, I want to talk a little bit about something I really love and use all the time. And I think people have forgotten about, maybe, I don't know. Our show today brought to you by Yahoo Finance. One of the things we do a lot on the show is talk about stock prices or what's going on in the financial market. Not because we care that much about that stuff, but because it's useful to figure out what's going on with Apple, for instance, when you're talking about Apple. And I have to say, for years now, it must be 15 years, when I need to look at that kind of thing, I go to Yahoo Finance. This is my favorite place to go to find out what's going on with any company. By the way, I'm on Yahoo Finance right now. A little tip for you. We're on the kind of the front page, and you can see all the things open and closed, day range, week, year-long range, and all that stuff. Click the advanced chart, though. This is where I really get a lot of value at. When I go to the max range on the advanced chart, I can see how Apple's stock has done for the entire history of the Apple stock, and I can even zoom in and zoom out. It's a very useful way to figure out where the peaks are, where the dips are, and whether we're at a peak or whether there have been better times. In fact, it turns out that the best time for Apple stock was May of last year, which is kind of interesting. Apple is just an example. I have to say, one of the books I've been reading lately is a book about automated trading. And again, it comes up, the best information is key. You need the research. When it comes to your financial future, you think anyway, you've done everything. You've saved, you've researched, you've invested, right? Well, now it's time to take your investments to the next level by using what every financial great has been using now for over 25 years. An old friend that's still there waiting for you, Yahoo Finance. Whether you're a seasoned investor or you're looking for extra guidance, Yahoo Finance provides all the tools and data you need in one place. It's the #1 finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle. Look at all that news, all that information. You get breaking news, original editorial perspectives. You get analyst ratings. You can, by the way, and this was a really nice feature, you can link your brokerage accounts, and you can do that securely. So instead of using maybe that broker's page, which, maybe they have an axe to grind, there's always a lot of junk in there. I link my brokerage accounts to Yahoo and get a unified view of your net worth, your 401k, your other investments, and what's going on with those investments. A comprehensive perspective is what distinguishes great investors, and Yahoo Finance ensures you have the insight to examine your wealth in its entirety. With a community of over 90 million users every month, their real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com. That's a nice, easy address to remember. It's the #1 financial destination. Still is. Used by many, many millions and all the best investors, Yahoo and me. yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. Let me show you again the nice thing you can do with the graph here. You can zoom it in, you can zoom it out, you can look, you can go, and I can see where the peak is, where the valley is. Really, really, really great stuff. yahoofinance.com. Quite the fan of Yahoo. Look, this is fun. Look at this. Let's see, where is it? Oh, see, there's the dividends. Love that. Anyway, I'm sorry. I get excited. No. It's a nice app. They've done a nice job, I think.
Honestly, the only thing I had no interest in maintaining my investments, my retirement stuff until the last 5 or 8 years, where now there are tools where, if I slide this, it goes this way. Oh my goodness, look at the graph's going up, and hey, look, now there are emojis next to
isn't that cool? Yeah.
I'm a 10-year-old child. I'm sorry.
Know. It's silly. But, whenever we talk about stock prices and stuff, I don't know if people have noticed that. I'm always pulling up Yahoo Finance. That's the one I think it shows it the best. It's very useful. All right, let's talk about FineWoven Gate. Now, here is a Apple wallet that I purchased at the same time as I purchased my latest iPhone 15. So it's been in use, 6 months? Something like that. September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April. So 8 months. It is in terrible shape. In fact, I replaced long ago the FineWoven case with a nice leather case. Sorry, cows. And I'm still using the FineWoven wallet used buying MagSafe because I haven't found anything quite as good as the Apple. But this does not wear well. And now, according to Mac Rumors, Apple has kind of confirmed that by supposedly stopping production. Actually, this comes from Apple leaker Kotsutami, who says they have stopped production of the FineWoven. I'm not surprised. This thing's crappy.
Yeah, and that got noticed like almost like the first week it got released, when social media was full of pictures of, hey, here are the FineWoven cases on display at the Apple Store. Here's what they look like after 1 or 2 days of customer handling, and that wasn't
and they're not
really
cheap.
Optimistic.
The MagSafe wallets. This is a $60 thing that I put on a $60 case, which I have long thrown out because. Yeah, they just don't wear well. I respect Apple's decision because they wanted to get rid of leather, right? It was to phase out leather.
It was a good statement to make, and also I think that they're very, very aware that there's a huge, wonderful market of iPad cases. They don't have to. It's not like when they make it's not like Apple was making like it's not as though this was the only case that was going to be available this year for all iPhones. So they can afford to make a change and take a risk like this, because I know that if they don't like it, people have like 100 different options for them. And it was a good experiment. Maybe the knowledge of what happened with this is going to affect how well the direction of new cases, new alternate materials. And they have such a good track record with alternate materials and experimenting with the physicality of device. It's not an embarrassing thing. Again, I did call it I did call it Woven Gate, because how could you not call it Woven Gate? And also Apple still has to pay karmically for Antenna Gate. I don't.
Well,
think
and if Steve Jobs were here, he would say you're rubbing it wrong, and that's really the problem.
Exactly.
Well, and I think it's astonishing that I don't know. I've never bought Apple cases. Never. I've only had Apple cases when I've had review units, or if there's some other reason that a case arrives with a phone. And so to me, the idea that you would pay $60 for a case, period, if it's not a leather case. I have bought a $60 case that was a very nice leather case. Yes, sorry, cows as well. But I don't buy Apple cases, and I certainly wouldn't pay $60. I mean, this is a company that also will charge you $50+ for watch bands. So I am not a fan of accessorizing from Apple. I get that if you're in an Apple store and you're buying a product, especially if you're not an enthusiast, and you get your Apple phone or you get your watch or whatever, that it's logical to say, okay, well, I would like a case. Do you have one? And that Apple would certainly like to sell you something with their branding on it. I would rather that they just sort of do silicone cases or something that's simple and straightforward and say, if you'd like something nicer, here are our lovely third-party options, and there are many more even than are available in the store. You can have leather, you can have fancy silicone or whatever plastic you might like. You can have a wallet case. I mean, I carry a ridiculous wallet case that's third-party because Apple doesn't make a case that looks the way I want it to.
Right.
And my FineWoven case, like I actually wrote a piece for 6 Colors, and I think my headline was, "It's fine," and it was mostly for the joke, but also at the time, like I had it for about a month, and it was not in as terrible a shape as many people were reporting. But I saw the other pictures too. It seemed like this was inevitable that it was going to happen, and Apple, I guess, in terms of deciding when they were going to let this out, whether they let it out officially or whether the leak just became too big to cover, I guess the question for me always was, well, when are they going to change direction, and how are they going to do it? Are they going to say FineWoven 2, FineWoven Pro, or are they going to go back to leather? I can't imagine that they're going to be able to go back to leather because they made such a big deal about moving away from leather. And it would be more embarrassing for them to say, you know what, we're going to do leather cases again, than it would for them to either exit, which I don't think they'll do, or just come up with something else that is more tenable.
Yeah.
Is it insensitive of me to say the cow's already dead because you're eating it, so might as well use the skin for something? Or is that just really insensitive? Not okay.
I'm sure some people are going to find it sensitive, but there are a lot of cases where, my opinion, there are a lot of cases where you can say, oh goodness, why are we wasting animal lives doing this? That's like a fur coat is like, there's so many great alternatives to
You're
fur.
Not eating the ferret. Yeah.
But the thing is, like leather, if you try to make a belt out of something that's not leather, if you try to make a wallet out of something that's not leather, leather is not a disposable thing. A leather wallet is something you hold on to for 10, 15 years.
Well, that's the problem. So you don't hold on to the phone for that long.
Watches used to be like that.
Yeah.
You used to hold on for a watch for 20, 30 years.
Yeah, that's the problem, is you are getting probably a new case every few years at least.
And he does have a good point in the sense that leather, when it gets old, becomes worn and comfortable. And I think a lot of people who have leather jackets
the damage is soft. The damage is a positive. Yes, it's absorbing oils, but that makes it deeper and richer. And yes, it gets creased and scratched, but again, that's something that people appreciate.
Right. And if you switch cases, it's because your new phone doesn't fit the old case.
Right. Yeah. There is an update. Kosutami put another post on Twitter. I will not say X, saying that they're still going to make Apple. They think that Apple will still have a new season of quote unquote of FineWoven cases, just like a new color range. But after that, that's it. But yeah, I mean, having brought up like alternatives to fur, that happened in great ways because designers embraced fake fur and they stopped thinking of it as something less than as a cheap version of something as something of a luxury item. They started thinking of it as something that they could do things with it that you can't do with natural fur, and you avoid all the problems of natural fur. It would be great if Apple, I'm sure that Apple will stick with it. I'm sure Shelly is 100% right. They can't go back to leather now. And so they will, as hard as they work to figure out how best to get every time they introduce new material into an iPhone, it became after a lot of lessons about metallurgy and manufacturing. I'm sure they're going to come up with a new version of an animal cruelty free case that has leather-like attribute, the things that we like about leather to it, but not using leather. And it'll be something that no other manufacturer has because Apple decided to put all the investment into it.
All right, so much. I thought we'd get more time out of that, but okay.
I guess
so much for FineWoven Gate.
I can't remember the last time I bought an Apple accessory.
It's foolish.
Like, I think
it's
that
really foolish.
It's convenient, but I always feel like I'm not saying that they're not nice. I just feel like they're a little overpriced for something that I would need. And I use Peak Design system. I use the Peak Design system because I've got it all. I've got all the pieces, and they're everywhere. So I'm just
and the nice thing about that is you only buy the base for the phone, and everything else continues to work with it. So I've
got it on my car, and I've got it. I've got all these mounts and everything else, and so you just change the phone every time. But that's it. And I have a hard time getting my head around. Like, I think that it's convenient for people who don't know better when they're buying them online, and they're like, "Oh, look at that! I might as well get that."
I'm gonna guess we're a little.
I will say I always get a case.
We're a little.
I really
unusual.
think it's people in the Apple Store. I think it's somebody who goes in and buys a phone, especially if they've switched to iPhone for some reason, and they go in and they say, "Okay, what I need? Well, now you need a charger, you need a cable, you need a phone, and you need a case."
The one thing I will recommend is that Apple does the install for the screen on top of your screen, the little screen protector, and they'll do it for you if you buy it there. And it is so much nicer than you figuring it out. Like they
T-Mobile does that too. We bought a phone for Lisa's father. A new iPhone for Lisa's father. And of course, and by the way, I was just going to say that most people buy the case when they buy the phone. So if you're buying it at a T-Mobile store, you're going to buy something from the rack there. If you buy it at the Apple store, you're going to buy something from the rack there. Mm-hmm. But yes, I agree with you. And T-Mobile, I was really surprised. They also put the screen protector on with that special. They don't have the machine that Apple has.
They have like a whole form-fitting thing that Apple that's designed for this thing, and it just puts it on, and I like walking out with it because I think the one time I didn't do that, I scratched it I felt like I was scratching while I was walking out of it.
Yeah, her dad broke the screen protector the next day.
Can I tell you that everybody is is a lifelong customer of screen protectors. Because everybody is going to be like me, where I spent my entire career as a phone user, never getting around to it, never seeing scratches on my screen, and then the first time you take a phone out of your pocket and you see a divot that wasn't there before, and you're like, how did I do that? Guess what? Guess what, Andy? This means that every time we buy a new phone, we're buying a screen protector for it because we need one of those.
Yeah,
I should maybe do that.
I don't. I hate screen protectors. I loathe them, and I have yet to have a problem. But maybe I just, I cut my fingernails.
But there's the question: do you loathe them because they're hard to put on, or because when you put them on they look kind of weird?
Yeah, I don't like any. I like to bareback it. I don't like anything between me and my screen.
You're a maverick. Untamed.
Is that maverick? It seems like that would be the norm, but I guess maybe it's judging by this panel.
Again, that incident of I did not do anything differently than I've done for the past 5 years with my phones. I did not have an accident or anything like that. I just picked it out of my pocket once and noticed that there was this big scratch.
I think modern screens are better than they were.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And that was my thinking too, because this is the Pixel 6 Pro. It's only actually it's 3 years old, so maybe there's better screen technology. But the reasons why that got me to realize that the reasons why I did not put a screen protector on was because the times that I tried them out, I gotten something for like review or a loaner, it was so fiddly to put on, and I don't think I put it on really extremely well. So there seemed to be something between the surface of the interface and the surface of the actual interface itself. If I could go into an Apple store and say, no, we have behind the scenes a really expensive and impressive device that does this all automatically so that you will not even know that there's anything on there. But nonetheless, if you get a scratch in this thing, you do not get a scratch in your new $1,000 device. I would do that. There's a new Google store that just opened in Boston. As a matter of fact, if they have that kind of a machine like at a Google store where I can buy my new Pixel and get it there, there's no way I'm not leaving the store without the phone and the screen protector.
I do use a case. I think everybody needs a case.
Absolutely.
I've never used screen protectors.
Always. I don't feel comfortable without a case, even if it's not even just like the heft of it or whatever. Just the phone doesn't feel right in my hand without a case. Yeah. I'm very persnickety about my cases. I like what I like, but the idea, there are people who somehow it seems like they feel like they're accomplishing something and they're showing off because they don't have a case. So they want you to see the color of their phone or whatever it is. Like, that's a risk that I'm not willing to take.
Yeah. It's nice. I will say that when you don't have a case and it's just in your pocket, my older one, I oftentimes I still use it for other things. And as something in your pocket, it is nice to not have a case. It's from a convenience perspective, but I'm too scared to take it anywhere because it's like, I'm going to feel bad pretty quickly here, and every time I drop it, I just go, oh, I'm really glad it has a case. I dropped it like literally last night off my night table. It hit the ground. It was a little bit bang, and you're like, oh, it's fine.
Mine always drops in the bathroom, which I don't recommend. Tile floors and phones are not friendly to each other.
Not good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have. I think we have covered this in great detail, and we got the maximum juice we could out of FineWoven Gate.
You were uncertain, and then we came up. We
came up with another 10 minutes, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, we are.
We'll fill that time.
And now I really want a better case. This is a Nomad leather case, and it ages. I've had these for years, and these age nicely. But I haven't. The nice thing about this, I don't know if the other mag wallets will do this, but Apple knows it's attached, right? So it actually tells me it got attached, or it tells me it's lost. Right. And it has the kind of Find My sort of. Do the other guys do that? I guess they probably would. It's just a magnet. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's take a little break. We come back with more. It's great to have Shelly Brisbane here with the Texas Standard, which is the public radio. Is it weekly newspaper?
It is daily. It is a daily statewide public radio show. We're on 30 public radio stations in Texas. Our typical time zone is 10 a.m. Central. Some stations shift us a little bit, but that's where we're at when we're on. TexasStandard.org, the national daily news show of Texas. Because we're from Texas, and that's how we have to say stuff. I didn't write that. You actually have the word Texas in the title twice, really. So plus a picture of the state. Yeah. In case there's ever any doubt, right? Because that's how Texas rolls. It's funny. I can't imagine California Standard, the national daily news show of California. I know it's nobody. Too many syllables. Yeah, that's nobody would want that. But there's something about Texas. Just don't mess with it. That's all. Right. There's something about it. Have you lived there your whole life? Most of it. I spent 5 years in California having to explain that I was from Texas. And oh my God, that was quite something. I also like the slogan at the bottom. No matter where you are, you're on Texas Standard. Texas Standard Time. That's how we start the show every day. Okay, now, Shelly, can I? If I may. Yes, Andy. The stars at night shine big and bright. Oh God. Deep in the heart. You gotta go this. There you go. I'm sorry. Yeah. It's all right. It's all right. I just had to verify that this is. I'm telling you, I'm channeling my time in California right now. Stacey Higginbotham, who used to be our host on This Week in Google, by the way, who was on Twit on Sunday, was Twig last Wednesday. It was great. Is of course born in Houston, lived for a long time in Austin. She's now in Washington State, but she went to I think it's UT. Mm-hmm. Where the song for the UT, The Eyes of Texas Are Upon You. The Eyes of Texas Are Upon You. Sounds a little bit like
I've been working on the railroad.
It sounds exactly like that. Not a little bit.
And
exactly like that.
She tells a story of playing, because I guess her husband's also a UT grad, at their wedding, playing The Eyes of Texas Are Upon You. And people like me puzzled saying, why are you playing I've been working on the railroad at your wedding? That's not that romantic.
You mean there's another song that has the tune of The Eyes of Texas? I had no idea.
There is. I don't know which one came first. I'm just saying.
Well, and then of course we have our intrastate rivalries because my niece and soon my nephew will be going to Texas A&M, so we have to have competition between UT and A&M. They're Aggies indeed.
Aggies.
One of them is an electrical engineering major. I'm very
Good place
proud
to
of
go
her.
for an Aggie. Yeah.
She'll be graduating with a degree and hopefully get into circuit design after that. So. Hooray.
You must be very proud. That's awesome.
I'm extremely proud. I put her in a radio story the other day, and I got to say I was proud of her on the air, which is, that was fun.
Aunties are the best, I have to say.
We try.
Yeah.
I threatened my sister that I was going to be the aunt that was going to get her kids in trouble, and I don't know that I've lived up to it. I've tried.
Yeah.
My daughter had a one-woman show in New York City on Saturday. And the only person that was invited, not her mother, not her father, not her brother, just her aunt. Her aunt could
Love
come.
it.
The rest of us had to stay home.
I've taught my niece how to make cocktails already, so that's the kind of trouble.
There's something about aunties. Yep.
It's part of the responsibility of an uncle, but especially an aunt, to be the person that a kid's parents don't want them to talk to, because the aunt will lead them to decisions that will make them very, very happy in life, but which the parent does not approve of.
I try.
Yeah. Let's take a little tiny break, and when we come back, the eyes of Texas and all the world will be upon us as MacBreak Weekly continues. Our show today brought to you by ZocDoc. Whew. I swear, we all know that there are things in life you have to compromise on. Maybe you got an apartment. It's in your budget, but the upstairs neighbor's a drummer. When it comes to health, no, don't compromise. And I think lately, maybe we all are a little bit. That's why you got to check out ZocDoc, ZocDoc, where you can find and book doctors who will make you feel comfortable, listen to you, and prioritize your health. Man, if there's any area in this country where we ought to have free market really and competition ruling, it's here. Because there are great doctors out there. But, they don't advertise. How do you find them? ZocDoc, that's how. It's a free app, and it's a website. You can use either, where you can search and compare highly rated in-network doctors near you and instantly book appointments with them online. Now, there's the search bar. If you're watching the video, you can search by location. So you can say, I want it within 5 miles of me, 20, 50, whatever. Availability, like, can I book them tomorrow? Are they taking new patients? The insurance they use, you really can narrow it down even to the discipline. It's not just doctors, it's dentists, chiropractors, and you can get, orthopedists or gerontologists. I actually used it to find gerontologists for my mom. You can search and really narrow it down, but then there's one more thing that makes ZocDoc sing that really is great. Every single doc has verified reviews from actual real patients. That makes all the difference in the world, because every doctor has a different style. Every person, every patient maybe wants a style that fits your needs, whether you like to get every detail explained to you or you just want to just give me the facts, Jack, just tell me what to do. You can choose that based on these great real reviews. And by the way, the typical wait time to see a doctor book on ZocDoc is between 24 and 72 hours. So if you're not feeling well right now, go to ZocDoc.com/MacBreak. If you've been putting up with something, oh, my hip hurts, my back hurts, why are my eyes changing color? Go to ZocDoc. I don't know. I made that one up. ZocDoc.com/MacBreak and download the ZocDoc app for free. Then you can find and book a top-rated doctor today. I've used it and it's great. ZocDoc.com/MacBreak. ZocDoc.com/MacBreak. We thank him so much for supporting MacBreak Weekly. All right. Let's see here. 18 gigawatts of clean energy. Actually, I am very kind of proud of the state of California. It wasn't widely reported, but a couple of weeks ago, we spent 2 entire weeks on renewable power, not generated power, solar, wind, and water. Apple's doing a lot to help that. They can now generate 18 gigawatts of clean energy, and they want to be replenishing fresh water it uses 100% by 2030. This is all in their Earth Day PR release. They made a pledge to be carbon neutral by 2030, so that's only 6 years away. And that's covering not just manufacture, but supply chain, office power, the power even used to recharge your phone and laptop. The update was published Wednesday ahead of Earth Day. And they now say that Apple and suppliers now use more than 18 gigawatts of clean energy. That's up from the year before, which was 13.7, and triple the clean energy use of 2020. So I know it's a little bit of a puff piece, but I think it's still important to share it.
Yeah. Also, in context of all the other stuff that, God, particularly if you're a journalist and you just get nothing but bombarded with these press releases of these just garbage. Oh, it's Earth Day, and so we're creating a whole new line of packaging for our new fruit bars. And it's like, oh God, let's all give the planet Earth a great big hug by encouraging our customers to buy more stuff they don't need at a 10% discount. But Apple Apple does a lot of self promotion here, but they got a lot of stuff to promote. They do a lot of really great work. They're way ahead of the game in terms of companies its size, trying to go from end to end, not just it's one thing to say that we're gonna use work our data centers on renewable energy. We're going to basically reduce our carbon footprint there, but also go as far as we're going to manufacture as many of our products from recycled materials as possible. They also around the same time released their annual environmental progress report that covers fiscal 2023. The highlights include like the MacBook Air, which they're saying the first Apple product made with 50% recycled content, reduced overall emissions by more than 55%. And then you scroll in and they will actually give you numbers so that if you want to see exactly how all these things were achieved and how well they're going. They're also willing to say, we did make promises to get things done by 2030. Here's the progress we're making. Nope, we haven't made that yet. Nope, we haven't made that yet. Nope, we haven't done that yet, but we're working on it. At least they're, again, not just simply issuing a press release saying, yes, we're way on track. Let's give Mother Earth a good, great, big hug. They are saying you can try to follow us and try to see exactly how well we're going.
You can even look product by product, which I think is really great.
Exactly.
That is an amazing number. 55% or 50% of the MacBook Air 15-inch is recycled. Is mind-boggling, really.
And think about how early in the design process that has to be a factor. If there all the different factors that go in, all the different voices that come in the design of a new product, for at the very, very start of the conversation, there was somebody who's keeping an eye on the environmental impact, where are the opportunities in the design of this that we can take advantage of to get that number higher and higher and higher. That, to me, is very, very impressive. I'm very cynical about this sort of stuff, and I'm very impressed with this.
I'm cynical too, and frankly, I appreciate the more numbers we get and the more breaking out by products and by initiative, because I know initially it was just we're doing great things, and we had stuff like the Mother Nature video at the WWDC
that was a little
years
much.
ago.
Yeah, that was
that everybody made fun of.
Yeah,
right. It totally was, and I think Apple still can be seen to do that. But I also think the more specific numbers we get, I'm not able to audit independently, and others aren't able to audit independently. So to some extent, we do have to take Apple's word for it. But the more numbers we get, the better off we are. I will remind you, though, that when FineWoven came out, that was one of the contributors to making the particular Apple Watch models more sustainable. I can't remember if they were supposed to be completely carbon neutral. There was some fine print in there. I can't remember the exact wording.
Yeah, they says right here in the report, a luxurious textile that's lighter on the planet. Luxurious, not so much.
Right. So I guess if they're going to replace FineWoven or move on from it, they're going to have to figure out whether they're going to be able to continue to make that promise, or whether they're going to have to adjust it a little bit while they figure out what that new material is. So that's something to watch.
It says our FineWoven textiles. Actually, now I have to take back everything I said. Our FineWoven textiles made from 68% post-consumer recycled content. So it's probably old water bottles. It has a suede-like feel. Yeah, it gets more suede-like as it goes, with a far smaller carbon footprint than leather. Okay.
But they were calculating the overall carbon neutrality of Apple Watches, including FineWoven bands, in a really narrow way.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be interesting to see, like I say, whether they have to pull back on a promise or whether they're able to pivot quickly and say, we have this other material that has a similar carbon footprint. And that seems like that will be hard.
And I think one thing to underline is that this is a lot of work. It costs billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Like this isn't like, it's not really a press release, or we really feel bad for the environment. I mean, to put out this kind of infrastructure is not a trivial process. And I don't think that it necessarily has any real impact on sales. It probably has, I mean, maybe a couple people, but most people are buying it for the product. They're not buying it because Apple's doing this. And so what it really shows is a commitment to this that isn't connected necessarily to the bottom line.
100%.
That they are, this is something that they care about. They think they should be doing as a company. And they're kind of moving it down the path. And again, I don't think that there's a bottom line driver, for this. And it is one of the arguments when it comes to the environment of large companies existing, is because they can make these big changes in a way that smaller companies could never take on.
Yeah, but as Derecho says in our Discord chat, one of the best ways to be carbon neutral is to allow the repairability of your devices.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's true. And also, I mean, we have to have some part in it as well. How often do we replace our devices? If our AirPods lose a little battery, do we go ahead and get new ones? How many people replace? How easy does Apple make it to replace your phone every year? So that's a choice you can make. And I'm not saying somebody absolutely shouldn't make that choice, but if we're going to have sort of judgy feels about the way Apple behaves in terms of the environment, we've got to think about how we interact with these tech products ourselves.
Yeah, and part of that really is everybody knows the phrase reduce, reuse, recycle. But what a lot of people don't know is that advisory is not here are the 3 things we can do. It's like, no, first most important thing is reduce, reuse.
Make it
after
repair.
That, reuse. And after right. So the idea that if you don't have to buy a new phone after every year, after 2 years, that's in itself makes a big impact across all the things that you buy. And so, yeah, that's kind of anathema to Apple's business strategy. There's also a good, Bloomberg had a really great report last week. I think also timed for Earth Week. They call it "What Really Happens When You Trade in an iPhone at the Apple Store." Yeah. And it's all about like a kind of a scandal they had with one of their contractors in Canada, a company called Geep Canada. That their company that they sent all of their Apple when you turn in a device to Apple for recycling, obviously they don't recycle it themselves. They send it to one of these contractors, and there was a big scandal because for two reasons. Number one, that a lot of these devices were just walk-in. Employees were like, despite Apple being really stringent about here are the security measures that you have to take. Here are all the investigations we will do as part of your contract. A lot of these parts were just walking out of there and being resold, but also the knowledge that you have perfectly functional iPhones that were just being shredded, just because not in contrary to Apple's contract, but because it was just simpler to simply shred them and then recover the materials that could be recycled, as opposed to, no, this is a working iPhone 9. Let's see if we can actually refurbish this so it can be resold as a used iPhone, or taken apart so that the screen, the camera, all these components can be reused. And it has lots of really great details, including we've all seen this, but this was more PR stuff. They're demonstrating, hey, look, we've got these robots that could disassemble an iPhone 6 into its components at a rate of X per hour. And that's kind of fallen behind because they just can't produce, these robots can't tear down a significant number of iPhones for the numbers that are coming in. It's a big challenge, and it points out that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I got a little.
Apple accused Geep.
All I'm saying is that it was good because it also kind of points out that Apple decided not to pursue the lawsuit against. They canceled the contract, of course, but they did not pursue the lawsuit. They filed the suit, but didn't go anywhere. Possibly Bloomberg is conjecturing because they didn't want a lawsuit to reveal here is exactly what we're doing for recycling, which might point out here's what we could be doing for recycling, but we we are not doing.
In 2020, Apple sued Geek in Ontario, Canada, for 31 million Canadian dollars for breach of contract. They accused them of failing to recycle nearly 100,000 items. But as Bloomberg points out, nothing happened for 4 years. Today, the case remains a mystery. No new motions have been filed, and without further actions, Geep and Apple's lawsuits could be automatically dismissed as soon as August and January. Geep countersued, respectively. Why would Apple expose some of the inner workings of its recycling program in a suit only to let the matter end there? Maybe they didn't want too much to be revealed. For instance, the fact that they're shredding perfectly good stuff, including, incidentally, in this story, boxes of T-shirts with the Apple logo that were completely usable but had to be shredded. That seems actually, a little aggressive to me.
Well, that detail actually just points out exactly how scared these companies are of Apple and how closely they monitor things. They said, well, if they got a box of Apple T-shirts, they didn't want to. It was easier to shred the T-shirts rather than wonder if Apple was going. Well, that fell under the purview of things that they're not supposed to like tamper with, take home, sell.
Except
do anything else
at the same time, they had a separate area where there were hundreds of Apple Watches off camera in a corner of the warehouse floor. Auditors found 2 bins of intact watches in an off-camera section of the facility. So maybe different managers have different points of view. One manager shredded the T-shirts. The other said, those watches, let's just put them in that box over there. Maybe we could do something with them later.
But I'm sure they learned from this. Also, there was a great quote from they quoting it. The piece quotes an industry executives saying that they were trying to make an example of Geep, citing a Chinese proverb. One industry exec puts it this way: "Kill the chicken to scare the monkey." So,
well, I mean, remember that several years ago.
It is a wonderful proverb. I don't know what it means, but I'm going to use it from now on. I think so. Yeah.
And several years ago, there were scandals to do with whether companies were auditing how their contractors were dealing with everything from child labor to working conditions. And obviously that's, more human-based and more serious than these recycling issues. But I'm sure that part of what Apple is doing is wanting to be seen to be auditing. If they're going to go to contractors and they're going to make promises about how we're recycling this stuff, they need to be actually doing the audits, and whether that comes just in the form of a literal audit that results in a change in what the company is doing or a lawsuit that ends the contract and has them go on to something else, that's part of the calculation that Apple makes in terms of keeping their own PR. I mean, it's not only PR. I mean, it's actual practicality because they are recycling these things or want those things to be recycled.
Because that's, I think, why Apple has dropped this and doesn't want to talk about it, because the way they're recycling it is not the optimal way. It would be far better to reuse than to chop them up.
Sure, of course. I think both things can be true.
Bloomberg writes, it may sound eco-friendly to smelt a device's metal so they can re-enter the supply chain, but recycling is far from the greenest option. The recovery value of an iPhone is low, and with 80% of its carbon footprint emitted during production, the most environmentally sound path is to keep the gadget alive as long as possible. And I think they didn't want people who were, being good citizens, bringing their iPhones back to Apple when they got a new one to get recycled. They maybe didn't want them to know what that means is we're just going to chop it up and recover the metals. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Shelly.
No, well, I'll just say something different, actually, because what's unfortunate about it is that people who are skeptical of recycling or who don't do it, a lot of the and some of it's true and some of it's folk wisdom that people say, well, what I recycle doesn't get recycled anyway. I can throw away my newspapers or my cans or my bottles. And there have been plenty of articles about how that stuff is shipped to China and not recycled, or something happens to it that shouldn't happen to it or that they didn't expect. And unfortunately, because people believe that, they're less likely to go to the trouble, and sometimes there is more trouble involved in recycling your own iPhone unless you're going directly to the Apple Store because you're going to get some kind of a rebate. And so I think it's just unfortunate for the idea that whatever happens to my iPhone, I'd like to be able to turn it in, and whether it's reused or whether it's recycled, I'd like to know that it has a life after I'm done with it.
What we generally do, of course we can afford to do this, is we hand it down. So there's a long chain of relatives, so that the one at the end of the chain is using a 4 or 5 year old iPhone. And that to me is the best way to recycle it, obviously.
Yeah, we do that.
you're suddenly making me think that one of the most positive things Apple could do for recycling iPhones would be to make that a service that you can make an appointment at the Genius Bar and say that, hey, I want to sell this iPhone, or I want to give it away to a friend or a coworker. Put it in the magic box that resets it to absolutely factory zero and leaves me with no concern that at any point the next person who owns this will be able to access my photos. At no point, if they take photos, will that wind up on my iCloud. Give me like a certification that this has been absolutely zeroed out. So that when I do sell it for a few $100, the person who buys it knows that, okay, here is a certification code that you can put through Apple's website. Say, yes, this phone has been zeroed out, so that when it does arrive, you will be able to basically set it up as a brand new iPhone on your device.
It's also a convenience service potentially, because I had to get my mom a new phone recently. She had an original SE, oh my goodness, and it was just not cutting it anymore. And so we had a new old phone for her, but I had to go and set it up. I had to find all of her Apple credentials. I had to wait while all the Apple ID information downloaded. I would have, given what we were doing last weekend, given how much family stuff was going on, I would have paid Apple or somebody to switch those phones for me.
This, by the way, Business Week piece by Austin Carr, which he deserves a lot of credit for this. Also kind of, I hate to say it, but this was always the Liam robot, the Daisy robots. These are always suspicious to me. These seem to me more like PR than anything else. Liam's precision automation proved a dead end, Carr writes. It could handle just one iPhone model, and not that well. If a device had corroded screws or sticky insides, the robot would glitch. A person familiar with the project estimated Liam could run for about 10 minutes without human intervention. Another person says Apple at times fed the robot still functioning iPhones and, for media demos, cherry-picked cleaner units so it didn't crash, suggesting Liam was geared more for promotion than scalability. Then, a few years later, you might remember Apple introduced Daisy. It took a promising destructive approach. Instead of delicately removing parts, Daisy's robot arms and 4 stations of machinery ripped off the screens, punched out screws, froze batteries for easier extraction, and knocked modules onto conveyor belts. The discrete output led to better recovery rates for elements like cobalt and tungsten. By 2019, when Apple opened the material recovery lab in Texas, where Daisy currently resides, the robot could process and disassemble 15 different iPhone models at a rate of up to 200 units an hour. They have recently added a second Daisy.
That's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
Boom, boom. Crunch.
Don't show up in this neighborhood ever again.
Yeah.
Last episode throws the phone out of a moving car.
Still,
one every 20 seconds. I mean, it's like
Carr goes on. While Apple recycling veterans and industry experts generally laud the innovation, some are surprised that Apple continues to hype a machine that's now 6 years old and capable of processing only 1.2 million iPhones a year, which is about what the company sells every 48 hours. Apple envisions third-party recyclers licensing this technology, but they haven't so far. They're doing more like Geep. They're just putting it in giant shredders. Anyway, recycling is hard. I think the bottom line is really, it would be great if Apple would pay more attention to repairability, make it easier to fix these, and not push a new model every year, because that's a problem. You know, a couple of months ago, I read a very sad line in some sort of environmental piece saying, you know, every plastic toothbrush ever made is still around. They don't decompose. They just go in the landfill. And so I actually went and I replaced my electric toothbrush with a toothbrush that uses cornstarch heads so they can be recycled and is repairable. It's aluminum and has screws in it, so it can be repaired. And while, you know, I'm not convinced I'm doing anything good, it does seem better to me after having, you know, purchased new electric toothbrushes, you know, twice in the last 5 years, that maybe this one will be repairable and last. You can send it back to them, and they give you a bag to send the heads back to them where they recycle them.
Yeah, so. And we could argue pro and con, like what steps like this specifically are going to do to help anything. But I think that the biggest win is that so long as you, as individuals, keep thinking that everything that you buy has a cost related to it. That in terms of, so and again, no one should have to defend. Oh God, you think you're going to save the planet with this toothbrush? No, but I can do what I can do. And if again, every single time I consider a purchase, I'm considering, do I really need this, and or am I going to get a good long life out of this, and what is going to be done with this stuff after it's no longer useful? If that sort of thing spread out amongst hundreds of millions of people does have an impact.
And incidentally, for anybody who says a cornstarch-based electric toothbrush head with bristles derived from castor oil will not work.
As long as
they work fine. They're exactly the same.
Replaces all the single-use plastic that we use. I mean, that's really like.
I'm trying to get rid of plastic. I don't want any plastic. We replaced all of the plastic containers with glass. We're trying to get rid of. It's hard to get rid of the Ziploc bags. There aren't a lot, but I bought silicone bags. It's hard to find good replacements for Ziploc bags or garbage bags. There are things, but we always carry. I'm sure you do too, Alex. Carry our canvas bags to the grocery store and use those and things like that.
Yeah, but those are the big swings. And back to work isn't very good for the environment either. When we think about.
Good. We're shutting the studio down in the next 6 months. So
I'm saying, but like Apple having this big press to go back to work. I'm not talking about. Yeah, I'm talking about for big corporations.
Yeah, I know.
The back to work is the thing.
Still, every little bit counts, and our 15 employees won't be driving all the way to Petaluma anymore. They will be
every
staying home.
Yeah.
Apple also has giant facilities with very bad transit access. I know about both the Austin and the Cupertino facilities, and it's never been a priority. They make a big deal about the wonderful architectural design and all the features in those facilities, but nobody from Apple that I've ever heard has talked about or made transit a priority. So.
Driving that direction with traffic to an area near the dish
it's a nightmare.
Super unhappy.
Cupertino, no fun. All right, let's take a little break. When we come back, we're going to get back to the things you really care about. An AI-powered calculator for your Macintosh. Woo! But first, a word from Collide. Kolide. You've heard us talk about Collide, I'm sure. They've been with us for some time now, but maybe you just heard that Collide was acquired by 1Password. Interesting. Now, that's big news. Both companies, of course, lead the industry in creating security solutions that put users first. Collide is a device trust solution. It helps companies that use Okta to authenticate users, right, to ensure that those users' devices are known and secure before they're allowed to access the data. And that's exactly what they're going to continue to do as part of 1Password. I just wanted to reassure you. If you've got Okta and you've been meaning to check out Collide, now is a great time. It's even better with the help of 1Password. Collide comes with a library of pre-built device posture checks, so it makes it easy to get started. Then you can write your own custom checks for just about any device you can think of, so you can really make sure that your network is secure. Plus, you can use Collide on devices without MDM. See all those guys with the Linux flags? Your Linux fleet, no problem. Contractor devices, no problem. And here is probably most important. Every BYOD phone and laptop in your company. Now that Collide is part of 1Password, it's only going to get better. Check it out. This is a great solution at KOLIDE, collide.com/MacBreak. You can watch that great demo we showed you a little bit of on the video to learn more and find out more about what Collide can do for you. For companies that use Okta, Collide's awesome. KOLIDE.com/MacBreak. Thank you, Collide, for supporting us at MacBreak Weekly. It's funny how excited people got about this story that Apple is going to finally release a calculator app for the iPad. Woo! Woo! Now, I don't know if James Thompson is as excited. He's been offering his pCalc for the iPad for many years. I don't know if this is going to Sherlock him. iPad OS 18 will include a built-in calculator app for all iPad models. This will be unveiled probably at WWDC June 10th. And macOS 15 is going to get a revamped calculator app which will integrate with Notes, which I think is interesting.
You know, the real challenge here is that if you have something that you didn't deliver, the longer you don't deliver it, the bigger the expectations are about what took so long to get here. And so my expectations are almost infinite at this point for this calculator.
Well, also the more chance you give for people like James Thompson to come up with a good calculator.
Right.
And get name checked whenever it comes up.
Yes.
James.
We love James.
We do.
And let's just acknowledge that pCalc isn't just, oh well, gosh, there's no calculator for this device, so someone made up. No, right. pCalc is part of the culture of Macs
really
and iPads and iPhones, because he has this devious, and what he is exactly the poster person, the poster developer for Apple development, where you'll take something as simple as a calculator, but this brilliantly weird person is going to come up and do this simple thing at a supreme level of creativity and execution that you did not think was possible for something so basic and functional. So I hope that if Apple does move forward with this, and there's screenshots to kind of demonstrate the rumor behind it, I hope it's like, by the way, James, for no reason, we're going to be writing you a huge check of thanks because we feel as though nobody would even be interested in calculators on any of our products had you not been the torchbearer for addition, multiplication, subtraction, and long division.
And if they don't do that, everybody go and buy Diced by pCalc, which James also makes.
Yeah. I mean, I think that anytime you're building something around an Apple product, you know that, it's a little bit of a good job, Wesley, I might kill you tomorrow. Like it's, like there's, because like when we had DVMat was one of the products that we developed, and it was for Final Cut, and it took advantage of the fact that Final Cut's keyer was horrible. And this is before the new Final Cut 10. And, it was one of those things that it's not a huge product. It's not the kind of product you retire on, but it did generate about, I guess I can say this, generate about $30,000 a month. just people downloading it and doing it just for years, for 8 years. It just $30,000 a month came into the account. We didn't do anything. We didn't have any support. We had support, but no one asked. And but when Final Cut 10 came out, I looked at it and I opened it up and I opened up the keyer, and the keyer was great. And I was like, well, that's the end of that. We need to find another product. And that was, we just had to pivot. So it's, I've definitely been on the receiving side of that, and it's, when we developed it, we thought Apple would get to it much faster than they did, and so it was just every year we were like, well, this is more gravy, rolling in, so it worked out well. But you have to, I think anytime that you're building a basic app and you're building it against something that really belongs on the architecture, you got to know that you're living on borrowed time.
Yeah, but I don't want James to be living on borrowed time, and I don't think
we should buy his Dice app, and everyone should buy.
Yeah, I think people will still. There are better calculator apps, even though, by the way, Apple Insider has this scoop. Apparently, it'd be really interesting to see how many minutes of time they devoted WWDC to this particular app, because I'm going to mock them. I'll be honest. It's a calculator app, right? And if you needed one for iPad or macOS, and you didn't have one, well, you certainly bought one, if not pCalc, something else.
This was, I think, the day it was released.
Yeah,
so
of course. This is Project Gray Parrot, which, according to Apple Insider, Marko Zivkovic says, is an unmistakable reference to the African gray parrot, which is a species of parrot widely known for its intelligence and cognitive abilities. We have to ask Rich Siegel about this. Does he not have an African gray? I think he does.
He has two African grays.
Yeah. And I believe
I've learned something today.
Yeah, there you go.
That.
another classic app developer.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. Again, another mad monk.
Mad monk. We need the mad monks.
Still making great software.
Yep. Oh yeah. I opened BB Edit this morning because they have a really great regular expression tool, Playground. And I needed to generate a regular expression. It's a great way.
I just write random stuff in it. I mean, I use it. I use it for everything. It's just always open.
I love it. And I think that it's a shell, MPW style shell thing is great. I just think that's fantastic. Shell sheets or whatever they call them. Anyway,
I've had to dive back into JavaScript in a major way over the past week for reasons. And like, oh God, why am I having? I used to be kind of better at this. And I realized that you're using the crappy built-in code editor for this web tool. You should actually be doing this in BB Editor. Like, oh, that's right. I don't have to type as much or remember what I declared things to be.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rich.
Yeah, a really good editor makes a huge difference in productivity. Yeah. By the way, Scooter X is saying, if you don't want to use pCalc, which you should, there's also CalcBot, which is $45.34. Oh, no, that's just the tape. I'm sorry. I thought that's not the price. You can email your tapes. You can do currency conversion, iPad support, woohoo. But Apple's going to do this too. Gray Parrot apparently has a lot of features. Math notes, updated calculator app will receive a new history tape. I don't know. People really care a lot about their calculator apps, don't they?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It feels, I have no inside information, but this feels like the sort of thing where Apple, people who work at Apple often build things for their own uses that Apple is not building for them. And sometimes there are these projects that like suddenly become so popular amongst the campus that, yeah, guess what? You're no longer a copy editor on the developer site. You are now like the head of the new calculator project that's going to be in
but a calculator, I feel like that's something an intern should be writing. I mean,
not if a calculator's not. This is what makes Macs Macs and what makes iPhones and iPads. It's not just a there's an infrastructure there so that you can be making calculations and figuring out the money and the math side of something to a project that you can then integrate into something that you're working on in Keynote, something that you're working on in the Notes app, something
apply to shortcuts. I mean, calculate 100%. Stuff, make shortcuts.
Right. And the things that like it's relevant to me too. I was doing this on my desktop, but now I need to push this onto my phone because I want to have that paper tape. I want to have that calculation history there. There's a lot they can do. And so it's again, if all they wanted to do was replicate what you can get for $5 in any drugstore, yeah, that's not even intern stuff. That's like your interview is that we're a half hour late for the interview. You have a half hour to write our calculator app for the iPhone and show me what you can do. Yeah, exactly. That's how basic it is, but it can be better than that.
Let's see. Let's talk about Apple pulling WhatsApp, Threads, Signal, and Telegram from the App Store. They say they were ordered to pull it, Beijing's orders, and Apple said, hey, we got to obey the law of the land, and that's, the way it is. They didn't say exactly why. But according to the New York Times and a person briefed on the situation, the Chinese government had found content on WhatsApp and Threads about China's president, who is notoriously sensitive, Xi Jinping. You'd think if you were the fearless leader of a great republic like China, that you wouldn't worry so much. But they didn't like it. They said it was inflammatory.
Thank God we don't get that crap happening in the United States.
Yeah, thank God, right?
Right. No thin-skinned leaders here.
The specifics
We're so much better than they are.
The specifics of what was in the content was unclear. The person said, I'm going to guess it had something to do with Winnie the Pooh. But anyway, an Apple spokesman denied that the Chinese government had ordered the apps removed because of the content.
They said that national security issues, but that's pretty much the same thing. So that could be that's just what they were told.
We should also point out these apps all have encryption. End-to-end encryption.
Yeah, these are all like non-Chinese companies that run these things, so they could also be part.
And the TikTok ban is potentially going to happen in the U.S., so there's a little tit for tat going on.
Yeah. Ironically, China does ban TikTok in China. I don't think the fact that they ban Meta products in China or Signal or Telegram or whatever is a reason to ban TikTok in the U.S. I don't think tit for tat is.
No, I don't either. Yeah. I feel like there's as many things are being banned under this rubric right now. It doesn't seem like it's about a specific thing. I mean, I'm sure they did find some things that made the Chinese leader a little thin-skinned, but it seems like this broad a ban was always kind of inevitable. If they have an excuse to ban one, they're going to ban all of them.
Well, and to Shelly's point, this did happen after the TikTok ban was voted on by the House.
So maybe,
and the Senate's going to act on it this week, and Biden said he'd sign it. So,
and it's probably going to go through because it's now part of a military appropriation bill.
Right.
So it's a lot harder to get it extracted out. There's no line item veto.
And the Chinese government is already very much on record as saying that they see this as an attack on a an economic factor inside China. This is a Chinese company that's very, very successful. You're trying to undermine the success of a Chinese company. Therefore, we have to protect our industry. So,
and then there's also the 15% of ByteDance that's owned by an American who is a big Trump supporter who went to the former president and said, "Hey, Donald, let's not ban TikTok." And amazingly, President Trump said, "No, let's not ban TikTok." Biden has no such scruples. I don't, it really makes me mad. My son is basically based his career on TikTok, got his start in TikTok, is, doing really well now. He's smart enough to have moved to Instagram and YouTube as well. But TikTok is a great platform for people, creatives, to get their exposure in the U.S. And so many great artists and talents have come from TikTok. And it's a shame. And all that's happening is American companies are saying, "Oh, great, let's make our TikTok clone." Even LinkedIn now, let's make our TikTok clone. And bye-bye, TikTok. We'll take it from here.
Yeah, I'm steamed about this because there is an obvious argument to be made that, yes, conceivably, the Chinese government has the power to compel a Chinese company to turn over any information that they are asked to do. Yes, that's possible, but I have not seen, as much as you've seen all the saber rattling for the proponents of this bill saying that, "Oh no, this is a national security thing. This is an entry point for China to do surveillance and to do cyber attacks upon us." Great, but if you're gonna pull one of the most important and most profitable for individuals and the most widely used social media platforms from the United States, you are going to have to come up with more than we think that conceivably this is possible. You have to really have a moment where you say, here's evidence that we have had eyes on that says that this is part of a larger plan that's going to be horrible for United States security, United States safety, United States citizens. Otherwise, you're not going to win this.
Well, those who support the ban also like to talk about the harm that TikTok as a platform and that other social media, short form social media does, but they're not doing anything to address Meta or any companies that. So it seems incredibly cynical, and we're not going to touch Meta at all. Okay, I see. So we can move everything to Instagram. We're not going to touch Google at all. We can move everything to YouTube, and whatever harms those companies have visited on social media, which have been the subject of a whole lot of Senate hearings and a whole lot of politicians bloviating, nothing has happened on that front.
Well, and it's fundamentally a different platform than all these other ones that are out there. So, like, for instance, Shorts is great. YouTube Shorts has got its own place in the market and everything else. But the nature of TikTok, of the collaborative effort of TikTok, where you're copying it, you're not copying it and someone's coming after you. In YouTube, you accidentally include some audio that doesn't belong to you, and you're going to get a cease and desist, or you're going to get some kind of impact. In TikTok, they do it hoping that you're going to do that. They're hoping that you're going to reuse their audio or reuse their video or react to you, and so it's just an entirely different form of entertainment. And I think that's the hard part, is that it's not replaceable by these other formats because they're all caught up in an old-fashioned way of thinking about copyright.
Right.
And that's the that's the. I mean, I think TikTok.
Yeah, I remember when you were all excited with TikTok and your kids, and a couple of years ago. And
I still use it. I don't know what I'm going to do for biking if it goes away, because that's what I bike to. Like I find biking horribly, stationary biking, horribly boring. So I need something, and I watch TikTok every morning.
You see, it is a drug, children. Don't get hooked.
It works though. It's like I need my TikTok in the morning.
This is actually from the Financial Times, a very interesting piece. TikTok fortune of billionaire Republican donor Jeff Yass threatened to buy Washington. His stake in TikTok, his company's, his Susquehanna International's group stake, is $40 billion. That's 15% of ByteDance. It is a significant chunk of Yass's net worth, according to people familiar with the matter in Financial Times. So there is at least one person lobbying really hard right now to keep TikTok from being shut out of the U.S.
I think it shakes a lot of sabers, but I do think that the legal standing of this law is pretty shaky.
Yeah, I think First Amendment protections and so forth.
I think it's going to be it's going to be hard.
Imagine if the Congress said, "Oh yeah, you've got to sell Instagram. Actually, well, they might.
Right.
FTC might.
They could.
But this also points out another. There's a component about the monopolistic nature of Apple and Google that I hadn't really thought about until discussion about this TikTok ban came about. That the United States government has the ability to shut down TikTok, shut down again an immensely powerful and huge forum for expression and communication, because there are only two places you can get apps from. If they simply tell Apple and Google, you have to remove this app from your app stores, that app is gone. And I'm not saying this is the end-all be-all argument about having multiple app stores, but if there were multiple platforms, if there were multiple app stores, that would become a much, much harder problem for any one government to try to solve. So big that they might not try to jump to this, well, we'll just push the button and get rid of it sort of solution. So it's a big problem.
Yes is the largest single donor in this election cycle, with $46 million for Republican candidates in this cycle. And he has been very active in lobbying against this ban. I'll be very curious. Rand Paul is one of his big donees? It's a terrible word. Recipients. How about that? Paul is, of course, against the TikTok ban, as is Trump now. I'd be very curious to watch this play out in Congress, because he's putting a lot of money into this election cycle. All right, one more thing before we cut to the picks of the week. Prepare them, though. You have been warned. I've been seeing more and more news about Apple's Vision Pro, and this from Ming-Chi Kuo 3 hours ago. Apple cuts its 2024 and 2025 Vision Pro shipment forecasts down from 800,000 to 400,000. I'm also seeing people report in the Apple stores that demos have dropped way off, and they might sell 1 or 2 Vision Pros a week. Look, I'm not going to take a victory lap here, because that would be unseemly. But I wonder what this means for the Vision Pro. How committed is Apple to something that is now all of a sudden not selling particularly well?
Yeah. I think Apple set expectations correctly by not predicting that, hey, you're going to be seeing this on the heads of everybody walking down the street from now on. They all but said that this is an experimental, like pre-release sort of thing for people who have deep pockets and a lot of sense of adventure. The report, which just came out like a few hours ago, it was a Medium post saying that Apple's going to be taking a very, very conservative view. They had changed their rollout for non-U.S. markets. He's also saying that there may be no new Vision Pro model in 2025. Previous expectation of his being that there would be a new model in the second half of 2025 or the fourth quarter 2025. And they also saying that Apple expects Vision Pro shipments to decline year over year in 2025 as well. So
I would check to see if I can get a Vision Pro tomorrow. But I have to go through that whole stupid do the thing with your face and all that just to find out what the ship date is. It's my guess that while we thought the Vision Pro would be very hard to get by now, it is not, and that you can probably go into an Apple store and get one today.
Yeah, I think it was Mac Rumors. I didn't make a note of it, but I think Mac Rumors had some sort of a anecdotal report of having polled like Apple stores and getting the sense that they're selling maybe 1 or 2 a week.
Yeah,
which doesn't sound like a lot. But
yeah.
But again, that was just the only way you can get that information, just by simply calling up people and trying to get a sense of it. But even so, yeah, it's pretty clear that Apple's maybe looking forward to the second version of this, the smaller, more compact version, a version that learned a lot of lessons from what people were complaining about, and also a version that learns from what developers are actually writing for this platform, so that they can make sure that they're enhancing the work of developers that are interested in making certain kind of apps and the people who are actually buying those kinds of apps.
But I bet Alex Lindsay is pretty darn happy about the new dinosaurs in Vision Pro.
I think that I am. So I think we should probably give it some time.
Yes.
Like I think that stories of its demise might be a little early. I think we should wait for a couple months after WWDC to see how things roll out. I think Apple still has a very limited release here. I don't know if they're waiting for, I'm sure that they can't wait to put out version 2. They probably already know what it is, but I think that there's probably still some powder that's in the arsenal there. So I think it may not be selling gangbusters right now, but again, and I don't know if Apple ever meant the first version to sell gangbusters, but there's no way to learn unless you put it out there, And I think that that's the fundamental. They have to get it out there. They have to get a certain number of people using it. They have to figure out how people interact with it. So anyway, so I think that it's going to be really interesting to see what happens at WWDC. I think that there's, there's rumors of some great content that's floating around that a lot of us are hoping to see somewhere in June.
But there's what is that? What's the Apple TV show you love about dinosaurs? There's
yeah. So what they're doing is they're taking a lot of the CG elements from dinosaurs from their prehistoric documentary, because they put out this prehistoric documentary a couple of years ago, and then what they're doing is they have all those CG assets have already been created. So going back and creating 3D experiences of those, and they dropped another one recently.
The second episode of Prehistoric Planet, Immersive, but it's only 5 minutes. It's not the whole thing. It's
no. They're all of these are just little bits and pieces of getting to see it, and I think that's what's really interesting is the experience of what we found with VR over the last 8 years of shooting VR and doing 360 was. It's not really something you want to put the whole show into. What you want to do is create experiences that augment shows. So you can watch a 16:9 show, and then we're going to give you some experiences that make it a little richer, make it a little deeper. And we've done that with 360. We've done that with AR and VR. And so it's a little harder to tell that whole narrative story in the same way if you are trying to do all of it in 360 or all of it in AR. Because there's just things you can't do with the camera. If I start flying you around, like there's very soft flying in these dinosaur ones and there's soft movement. If I start moving you the way that was in the original show, you'll get sick. So those are all things that we have to kind of take into account as we go through it. But I think that it's pretty impressive, like what they're doing right now. So I think that there's I think that there's a lot that's probably going to happen over this year.
It just shows how hard it is to do, because it's taken them since the original Vision Pro release with the Pterosaur Beach. It's taken them, what is that? 4 months, 5 months. To put out this 5-minute Triceratops forest. But it is out now. And you get it on the Apple TV Plus.
The question is, did it take them that long, or are they putting it out at a rate that they want to put it out at? I don't know if they're necessarily. A lot of the content that we've seen so far has been shot or produced many last year.
We meant to spread it out by 5 months. Yeah, that was a plan.
Well, there's no reason to put it. You can put it all out at one time, and
you can put it out more often than every 5 months.
Yeah, no, I think that it's, I think that there's, it's a lot. I will say that it is a lot of work, and it lets you see little glimpses of these things. Like for instance, I felt like the MLS sampler that they put out was a little bit of a misfire,
right? Because
they were cutting so fast.
It's hard to do, I think, is the point, right?
Well, you really want to hang on things and let people be there, and that's so. I think that those are learning moments too.
Yeah, and just one note: no David Attenborough narration on this. I don't know if Sir David doesn't like Vision Pro or just wasn't available. I don't know. All right, let us get ready for our picks of the week. Shelly Brisbane, great to have you once again from Texas.
What does that mean,
of the
Leah?
Texas Brisbanes.
The others are in Pennsylvania, apparently, but all the ones I know are from Texas.
Andy Anako, he's from New England, and from the left coast, Mr. Alex Lindsay. We'll be back with your picks in just a moment. I do want to make one little plug for our club. We had such a great event. We celebrated our 19th anniversary on Sunday with an open studio. About 25 people came by. That was our maximum. We couldn't hold more than that. About half of them went on to Lagunitas to join us to celebrate a little bit at the Brew Pub, and that was fun. That was so much fun. I met so many of you. Thank you, all Club Twit members. I'm very grateful to our Club Twit members. But one of the things I realized is, to a person, they were fascinating, interesting people working for the most part in technology. I guess that's not a surprise. One of them designs or incorporates, used to work at Fitbit, now works at Google, putting the Fitbit guts into the Pixel Watch. Another works at Meta, doing the Meta AI glasses. There were people in security. There were people in finance. It was a really interesting group. And it reminds me that there is a good reason to join Club Twit beyond over and above supporting the network and getting access to the shows and the video and ad-free versions of the content. All of those are nice benefits. But really, you're joining a club with some pretty fantastic people who can answer your questions, people you'll love to talk to. Get in the Discord and join the conversation. And all of this is just $7 a month. I invite you to join Club Twit. We would love to have you in the club. Twit.tv/ClubTwit. If you have technology questions, it's not just me and Micah and Andy and Alex and Shelly and all of that. It's the members of the club who can help you. And there's a lot of that going on in the Discord as well. Twit.tv/ClubTwit, $7 a month. And the most importantly, of course, you're making a big difference in our bottom line, letting us continue to do what we want to do. Lisa had said that probably will be the last open studio we have. I think that's one of the reasons so many people wanted to come, because one of the big expenses right now is just running this studio. And I think in the next 6 months or so, we're probably going to, as I mentioned, send everybody home and work remotely. So we're looking at that. We're going to do Thursday, we're going to do Stacy's Book Club using StreamYard, which is one of the technologies we're looking at for doing stuff from home. So I'll be at home doing Stacy's Book Club on Thursday for you Club Twit members. Let us get to the picks of the week. I'm going to, because you're our very special guest, start with Shelly Brisbane.
Oh, I was afraid of that.
Well, you can demur if you wish.
No, I'll go.
Okay.
I have the courage to make this pick because of one Andy Anatko, because a few weeks ago, Andy picked something that I loved and adored. In fact, I slacked him and I told him, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe you picked it. And so I, inspired by it, have a different pick. Andy picked the Torchy Blane movies from the 1930s. And I was just...
And you knew them? You knew them?
I did. Do you know me, Leo?
I do an
old movie podcast.
I'm so impressed that you knew Torchy Blane.
I am not going to pick old movie-related things. I'm going to pick old television-related things. Lately, my comfort watching has been 1970s detective series, not Columbo particularly, but I've been watching Quinn Martin shows. I've been watching
Mannix, Rockford Files.
Mannix is not Quinn Martin, but I've been watching. I love Mannix, but he's not Quinn Martin. Barnaby Jones, Untouchables.
Oh yeah.
Streets of San Francisco, The Fugitive. Those are all Quentin Martin shows. And there's something just very stoic and laconic about the way Quinn Martin introduces shows. And he'll go, Barnaby Jones with special guest stars. And one of the fun things about watching shows from the 60s and 70s is that you get to see the special guest stars when they were just babies. And they became whatever great actor they became later in life, or had their own series or something like that. But they're very structurally simple shows. In the case of Barnaby Jones, you actually know who the killer is beforehand, and then Barnaby, who's Buddy Ebsen from the Beverly Hillbillies, has to go and solve the murder. And Mannix is about car chases and running really fast in a suit, which I enjoy a great deal. So I would just say generally 70s TV shows, but also specifically Quinn Martin productions that include Barnaby Jones and Cannon and The Fugitive and The Streets of San Francisco.
And then where would we find these?
Well, Barnaby is on Pluto. A lot of them are just spread across the streaming services. You can never predict where something is. I would actually look at the free services if you can tolerate the ads, or if you have a paid subscription to one of the ad-supported services. But I've found them on Pluto. I found them on Tubi. I've found a lot on Amazon.
12 O'Clock High was an early Quinn Martin production.
Oh, I am not familiar with that one.
Oh, that was I used to watch that when I was a kid. Yeah. Wow.
But
There's quite a few
super
of
random
these.
where you can find them. I think Hulu probably has something. I think probably the best thing to do is to go to justwatch.com, which is kind of my source for that kind of information, and then look for the show that you're interested in and see where it might be streaming.
The FBI.
Can I just say that as a
Dan August.
Dan August, right?
Dan August.
as a kid, like who grew up in a time before cable TV, and you just watched whatever was on TV in syndication when you got home from school, whether it was age appropriate or not. There's something about like some sort of a series on film where the credits include a Quinn Martin production.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Where I have no idea who this. Like, I'm a little kid. I have no idea who Quinn Martin is, but it's like Battle
Hank
Creek,
Sims.
Michigan, or
Hank Sims.
It's like,
But his style of introduction is so simple. Like you can tell by looking at the intros that it's Quinn Martin, even before at the end, because he definitely promotes himself. But the sort of style of, this is the deep voice that has the name of the show, and then here are the 4 special guest stars who will probably go on to be more famous for other things later.
Yes.
If you want to see stars driving cars that get about 6 miles to the gallon on leaded gas, also a great resource.
Yes.
So the legendary Hank Sims, who passed in 2013, was the guy who narrated all of those, the FBI, Barnaby Jones, Cannon, Streets of San Francisco. That was his style. And by the way, he was so distinctive that when they made the movie Police Squad, they had to hire Hank Sims to do the announce for Police Squad. Good pick.
Very nice.
Now you've got, I want to get some popcorn and watch some Barnaby Jones. Yeah,
Come over and we're going to watch Barnaby Jones tonight on the Apple TV.
I love it. Thank you, Shelly. So wonderful to have you. I appreciate it. You're coming back.
It's great
Jason
to be here.
we don't know where he went. He just disappeared on a plane. So he'll be back, I think, next week. I hope. Andy and Notco, your pick of the week.
Tonight's episode, Hey Diddle Diddle, the Cat and the Murder.
Perfect.
That's perfect. That's exactly the kind of title it is.
My pick is a media downloader for YouTube that I found last month and I use a lot. There are a lot of old music albums get posted on YouTube. You know that my policy is that you don't want to be Johnny No Want to Pay. You don't download copyrighted content because you don't want to pay for it. However, there's a lot of music, a lot of albums that are just completely out of print and they're never coming back into print. But someone actually took an LP and actually recorded it and put it onto YouTube and maybe even separate it into tracks. And oftentimes I will get like an old comedy album that way. So I've been using a really great tool. There's a company called MediaHuman that makes a whole bunch of like free like media conversion tools. One of them is called YouTube to MP3 Converter, and it does everything in one stop. You basically just paste in a playlist that represents an album. It will download all of the quote video and quote files, convert them to MP3s, and then then you do have to do a little bit more manipulation to turn it into a really like functional album on iTunes or whatever your Plex or whatever. But it gets so many steps out of the way. And the ironic thing is that I've discovered YouTube to MP3 Converter when I had just a few weeks ago. I had a problem just like this where I downloaded an album that got downloaded as, I guess they uploaded as a mix of like MP3s, Ogg Vorbis, and a couple other formats. And so I just needed, I know I've got I must have 3 or 4 different music editing apps that will ingest a music file and let me export it as something else. Really, I just want to drag things into a window and say, please convert this all to an MP3 and make that happen. And so they do have MediaHuman Audio Converter, which does that kind of batch conversion. So if you need batch conversion, like if you've been ripping all of your stuff as Apple lossless and you want to convert them all to more industry standard kinds, it will do that. But YouTube to MP3 Converter is also free, and it will just simply it'll just give you the pile of MP3s that you want. So if you go to MediaHuman.com and look at the collection of stuff, everything's free. They're actually multi-platform. So the good news is that made it possible for them to take what they probably wrote as a Windows app and release it for Linux and release it for Macintosh. The bad news is that it's not the most like Macintosh style app you've ever seen in the world, but it's a lot better than a lot of open source projects you've seen that are multi-platform. So high recommendation for that sort of stuff. Again, particularly because I think it's a damn shame when an album that came and went, but even if it came and went without much success, someone worked really, really hard on it. And somebody 30, 40, 50 years later thinks enough of it that they wanted to, they took the time to put on the LP, convert it to a digital file and upload it to YouTube. Those things need to survive, and tools like this will help it survive because now you can actually put it on your phone.
Or download all the episodes of Barnaby Jones and listen to the music and the announcement. And do you have my audio? I don't know if. Oh yeah,
Act 2.
No. That's the open.
yeah. You know it.
I've heard it a lot lately.
So
But-
many movie and TV stars from the 40s, 50s, and 60s were able to maintain their lifestyle based on being stars on booking of Barnaby Jones or
Wait till you see who's the guest star
Well,
in this.
that's why you watch Murder, She Wrote. That's full of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Lee Merriweather.
Janice Rule, Darlene Carr, Victoria Shaw, special guest star William Shatner.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
To Catch a Dead Man.
To Catch a Dead Man, 1973.
I bet William Shatner's the killer.
By the way, I didn't realize this, but Hank, yeah, I bet he is. What do you think? He looked a little sweaty.
Shatner
Right.
was the killer twice on Columbo, by the way.
I think I knew that.
He's shifty. He's shifty.
Right. He's nervous. Like he just gives that impression of having something to hide.
Hank Azaria, who is the great voice guy who does a lot of Simpson voices, says he actually patterned his TV announcer on Hank Sims. That's the voice he used. Alex Lindsay, your pick of
By the way, there's a great interview with Azaria, Hank Azaria, that is of how he does all of his patterns and how he does the. I kind of went down this rabbit hole because there was in the actor studio there was all of the cast from The Simpsons, or not all, but a big chunk of them were all in one place, and so they had all of them doing their stuff. But then I kept on going down that path, and he has just this incredible interview. What's funny is I always thought I thought of him as an actor because I'm a big fan of Grosse Point Blank, and he's in Grosse Point Blank for like a minute. But I think of him as like, oh, the guy from Grosse Point Blank, the CIA guy, and so when they list all the movies he's in, they never list that one. Anyway, so he just goes through how he patterns he copies somebody, like it's a roommate,
right.
It's a person, it's these people that he used for that, and it's really amazing how many voices he does inside of The Simpsons. It's really fun. Anyway, so I realized I did a search. MacBreak Picks, by the way, MBW Picks is very useful because I always go, have I said this before? like I'm always, and so if you're always
And
wondering,
now I know.
Yeah, MBW Picks. I think Leo recommended this 5 years ago or something like that. This is Reality Composer.
I only recommended it because you told me
much
about it, and we played with it because of you. So you get the recommendation, really.
So Reality Composer is it's Apple's own reality system, and when it first was released, it was mostly just so that you could see your projects.
Right.
But what's happened now is that they've really built these great tools, and it's just such an Apple approach to photogrammetry. I'm going to guide you towards it. You turn it on. There's almost nothing you need to know. It lets you just kind of throw it together, and it builds great models. So what this does is it guides you through capturing, and I was just using it over the weekend to capture something, and I was just thinking, this is really great. I don't know if I've talked about this before. And I use it. I switch back and forth between when I'm doing an object, I use this program and for Reality Composer, and when I'm doing larger objects or I'm just kind of whacking through things, I use Polycam. So those are the two that I kind of go back and forth with on my phone. But the Composer is just a very detailed way to do it. And what's interesting is it doesn't upload it anywhere. So when you do those models, it does it all on your phone. It's a very Apple-y way to do things. Polycam will upload it and bring it back, or there's a lot of processing there. But this is it's all done on your phone, and it will walk you through it. You have to learn how to dance with it a little bit of getting all the pictures. But it's taking those pictures and it's giving you this little visual guide of how to take pictures of your object, and it produces really high quality models. So anyway, so it's
nice.
And again,
and it's free, of course. I think it's Apple.
Yeah, and remember that USDZ now, what it produces, you can text it. So like I've done a couple things. I'm like, hey, but a good example is my daughter was making she's proposing a bench for her school that they might build. It was like part of their projects, and she made it out of cardboard. And she made it at 1/12 scale, but she cut it in little strips of cardboard and everything else. So I just took this, and I took Composer, and I took all these pictures of her little piece of cardboard, and then we brought it into SketchUp and then built a a full USD model of the bench, and that's the kind of the workflow that you can get into is like, and take something and, grab something from the real world and add things onto it. And then sometimes you're like, what the number one reason I use this app and Polycam is actually to print things that will connect to my what I was doing earlier this week was I have a Blackmagic A10 Mini Extreme. That's the switcher that I use in front of me. And I just needed to build something to raise it up. And there's not a good 3D model on the internet. So I just digitized it, like with this app. And then nowadays my son does my son does all the modeling. So I will hand him the model of here's the Extreme, and he'll build a 3D model of my little stand for me, and then I will pay him. So anyway,
nice way to make a little money.
It was like he could work at Chick-fil-A down the street, or he could work for me building 3D models and make the same amount of money.
Yeah.
So anyway, so but the point is being able to grab things in the real world and be able to use them either. Again, we send examples to each other all the time. So we'll take pictures of something and send it and just text it, because the iPhone will just, open it up, and it'll open it up at scale, which is kind of crazy. Like if you send someone a USDZ file, it'll just open it up in front of them at the size that it was, and they can kind of walk around it and give you feedback and so on and so forth. So it's not just for the Vision Pro. It's the AR stuff is pretty useful.
Reality Composer, build augmented reality. You're doing photogrammetry and you didn't even know it. Thank you, Alex Lindsay.
Yep.
What's coming up on the Gray Matter?
Gray Matter. We have Mark Sandoval. He is we're gonna be. I mean, we're stuck in politics right now because there's so much politics going on. So he'll be, so we'll be talking about that on Friday.
Nice.
And most of us are still recovering from NAB. So we're just, NAB was, so the big thing.
How did that go, by the way? Yeah, we hadn't really talked about that. Yeah.
We found a new format, a new way to do cover events. And I think we were kind of in this mode of trying to search for it. But what we did there is, I think we talked about it a little bit during the show.
We saw your special rig and all that. Yeah.
Well, so what we did is we were able to have the actual panelists just talking. So imagine you being able to sit here in the office and send somebody out, but you're talking to the folks that are on the ground.
Right.
And we figured out how to do that really effectively. And I thought that it was really powerful. Like I don't know how much I can watch someone with a microphone going back and forth after that. It was kind of a shift in how we looked at how that worked. So for us, it was great. There was, obviously everyone talking about AI. So a lot of folks are talking about AI. A lot of folks are talking. I mean, I think that we just came out of CinemaCon, which is the week before. Not a lot of positive things about the film industry trajectory at the moment. So there was a lot of that was kind of hanging over a lot of NAB, people just trying to figure out. I think that in the media industry, everything's contracting very, very fast.
Yeah.
And so they're all. I mean, it went from being kind of like, oh, we're getting smaller to wow, we got really small really fast. And so everyone is. So that's been.
Does that mean we're all going to be watching Old Mannix and Barnaby Jones episodes for the permanent future? Or
we can only hope.
I think that
and
could
so
be worse.
I can make money curating them for you. I'll have a website and a podcast.
Yeah.
So many plaid sport coats. So many plaid sports coats.
Yeah.
So many old cars.
The discussion is really that there'll probably be better content coming out, just not as much of it. That everyone was overproducing content. And with the change in the financial structure over last year, they are going to be much more touchy about, like, they're going to be much more picky about what they make. And that has, dramatically changed the flow of things. And that little break that they took of not making anything over the last 6 months of last year, it gave them time to think.
Right.
And I think everyone was they were in this, like, we got to keep up with the Joneses, and suddenly all the Joneses stopped, and now no one's turning everything back. Like, everyone thought everything was going to get turned back on in the spring, but one of the discussions at NAB was people aren't turning things back on, and so they're, and they don't intend to. Like, when you talk to them, no one's planning to go back to the level.
Ironically, Netflix had its best year ever, the huge jump in subscriber,
Well, and a lot less production costs. So the best year ever was what they noticed was, hey, we made made a lot of money without making all those productions.
Right.
What's really become a conversation is, what is the minimum viable product to hang on to subscribers? Not like, how do we produce everything they ever wanted, but really like, so there's a lot of...
Isn't that the way of the world? What's the least thing we can give our customers and still keep them?
I think that but the problem is the business model for streaming, other than for Netflix, Apple, and Amazon, for everybody else, it's been way too expensive and not generated enough revenue. And so what they're trying to back into is like, how do we actually make a profit with this? Because they weren't able to get enough subscribers. I think everyone rushed for the door. Some of them are in big trouble. Paramount and NBC and others were just too late. And there's not a lot of good excuses for being late. They were talking about doing their own apps in 2015. Like they just took too long to figure this out. So there's a lot of, it's not so much that they're trying to, they are trying to get more profitable, but they're trying to get to be profitable. Like, it's not sustainable to keep losing money. So that's been the big problem. And again, you have Netflix, which is massive. Just so much further ahead of everybody else. And then you have Apple and Amazon that don't really need, their business model, they have a kind of a Kaiser Soze model, which is that they don't need to make money on what they're selling, right? And then then you have everybody else. It's trying to figure out how to turn this into a business, and that's the hard part. And so that was definitely a discussion that was floating around at NAB.
Interesting.
Was how people are going to work that out.
All the NAB coverage at officehours.global. You can participate every morning or watch on YouTube. Andy and Akko, GBH calling your name. Where's Andy?
Yes, Thursday at 1:10 in the afternoon Eastern Time. Go to WGBHnews.org to stream it live or watch it later. So, listen to it later, not watch it.
And Andy's home on the Narragansett Bay is just a beautiful place. You could see the yacht harbor right below him, and it's just gorgeous.
And I didn't even let you see the submarine pens because you had to leave and it was kind of rainy. Next time, we will go out and under.
I will be back.
See some stuff.
Thank you, Andy. It was a lot of fun. Thank you, so Shelly, Brisbane, Texas.
Standard.
Texas Standard. I almost said Observer. Texas Standard. Thank you, Shelly. Always a pleasure having you on. Thank you for filling in for Jason. We'll have you back.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun. And now that you know the name of the show, we're good.
You must do some podcasts too, yes?
I do a few, yes. I do, in fact, a podcast about old movies called Lions, Towers, and Shields. So if you want to hear me yap on and on about movies made in the ancient times, Lions, from the Incomparable Network. So yeah, Jason and I are always, I am part of that little bunch. And then for Relay, I do a podcast called Parallel, which is about accessibility and technology.
Nice. I was not aware of, there's so many shows on Incomparable. I can't keep up. I did not know about Lions, Towers, and Shields.
We are at episode 96. We're
amazing.
About to, we just finished our spring season. We'll do a summer season of international classic films. So episode 100 will not be one of those, but we're going to be doing that pretty soon. And it's been a lot of fun to do that show. And someday I'm going to get Andy to come on because I've invited you.
Please. Have you?
That sounds so cool.
Have.
Sounds so cool.
I was foolish not to reply.
Andy, put on your morning culottes and get on in there. Yeah.
Exactly.
That is one of the best names of a show I've ever heard of. And it's morning with a U, by the way. That's what makes it.
That's because there is a person in there who is in mourning who is wearing culottes. Hence the name.
At least I hope they're black.
Come up with by one of my wonderful panelists, Mickey Maynard, who is always game to talk about old movies with me.
Love it. Thank you, Shelly. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Alex. Thanks all of you who joined us. And a special thanks once again to our wonderful, brilliant, fascinating Club Twit members. That is really the blessing of this whole enterprise, is that the community that is sprung up around it. And I am so grateful to you all. And if you're not in the club, get in the club, twit.tv/club. Twit. We do MacBreak Weekly Tuesdays, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1800 UTC. The live stream is on YouTube. Whenever we go live with a show, we turn on the stream on YouTube. So you might want to smash the bell, as the kids say, so you get a notification at youtube.com/twit. And if you're watching live, you can talk live in our Discord, and it's kind of fun to have that going on in the background too. I love our our chatters. After the fact, on-demand versions of the show are at the website, twit.tv/mbw. You can also watch a YouTube channel dedicated to the video from MacBreak Weekly. The best thing to do, though, I would say subscribe. You could choose audio or video and get it automatically the minute it's available. Just pick your favorite podcast client and subscribe to MacBreak Weekly. We'll be very glad you did. Thanks for joining us. Now it is my solemn duty to tell you to get back to work because break time is over. Bye-bye.